This is Atomic Shinobi and today I'm going to narrate second part of What If Naruto Became Kami Shinigami. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
Tenten's house smelled strange when she woke up. Her mouth was watering and her nose was enjoying the strange scent. She was preparing breakfast when she suddenly remembered the blonde she had left unconscious on her floor, and her first thought was to wonder who in the hell had broken into her home. As she stretched the kinks out of her back and arms, a smile appeared on her face. She had already trained the boy to cook for her, even though they hadn't been dating for 24 hours. When her toes touched the chilly wooden floor, she swung her feet to the ground and barely held back a shriek. With a huff, she shuffled back under the covers and jumped back onto the bed. She detested cold floorboards, and it was just too damn cold. They were the scourge of her daily life. She stuck her head back over the side and looked around for something to give her bare feet the necessary cushion, like socks or shoes. After saving the day with an old pair of pink socks, she headed to the bathroom to take a morning shower. Tenten reflected on the previous evening as the water poured down on her and she washed her unbund hair. She would gladly do it again because even a simple evening spent with Naruto had been so much fun. She already knew what her final makeout session would have been like, even though she didn't get it. Just without a pre-existing beating down, she groaned as the spigot was turned off and the warm water relieved any tension in her muscles. It was time to see what her angel with the blonde hair had in store for her. Tenten was unaware that the same angel with the blonde hair was conversing with a familiar angel with the brown hair. The boy had been awakened before dawn by Soka, who was now having a very funny conversation with the blonde. "I'm telling you, Soka, I think she might be the one." "Really? Whatever gave you that idea, Naruto? She's just so perfect. I'm completely at ease with her. I'm happy." Soka gave his youthful charge a smile. Although he wouldn't validate the boy's suspicions, he would encourage him to draw his own conclusions. That was definitely more enjoyable. "I admit, she is a very interesting girl. Very pretty too. I'm sure that has nothing to do with your decision." After blushing, Naruto went back to the stove to continue cooking. He did not turn to face Soka. "That's a bonus, I'll admit. But Tenten's better than that. She's a complete package. Everything I've ever wanted in a woman, and she throws a hell of a right hook. I think I'm in love." "Oh, do you now? Are you sure? This isn't another Sakura type of crush?" Disgusted, Naruto gazed at the angel. He has no right to imply that. "Hell no, I actually feel something for Tenten. She's never hit me for something I didn't deserve. She never abuses me verbally for no reason at all. She's actually able to keep my ass in line pretty well. Yeah, I think I'm in love." Soka felt Tenten emerge from the shower and grinned at his youthful charge. He got up and slid the chair he was sitting in back under the table, figuring it would be best to vanish before the girl discovered him in her home once more. "Well, congratulations if it's real, Naruto. I hope the two of you are happy. I have to go now. Good luck." The angel vanished before Naruto could respond, and Tenten came out of her bedroom a few seconds later. Naruto merely gazed. She looked better in the morning than he had ever thought possible. After taking a shower, Tenten had made the decision to get dressed for the day. She didn't have any missions or team practice that day, and Naruto probably didn't either following yesterday's incident with Tsunade. That meant she had her brand new boyfriend to herself for the entire day, unless something happened. Happy days. Oh, she wanted to pretend to be a couple and be seen with him for a single day. And damn it, that was going to happen today, no matter what. At her core, Tenten was always a girl. Yes, she had won some makeup for watching Neji defeat Naruto in her first Chunin exams, but that had been a long time ago, and she had given up on trying to win over boys. Why should anyone care about her appearance? However, she felt like the most beautiful girl on the planet when Naruto gazed at her. It seemed as though he had never seen her before each time. He approached the world every day with a sense of childlike wonder that made it difficult to avoid getting sucked into it. She searched the closet until she discovered a pair of black pants that fit her figure well and could conceal a few kunai. They were hurriedly put on, and she started searching once more for a shirt that would fit her well. As she continued to dig and found nothing, she snarled. All of her possessions that weren't ninja related were pink. She had to be in love with that color, but why? When she discovered something she hadn't worn in a long time, her eyes lit up. She had only worn the shirt once, so it still looked brand new. It had a dragon slithering around the middle, and it was white. When she purchased it, she tore the neckline and was on the verge of throwing it away until she noticed how well it accentuated her chest in a mirror. It was sufficiently modest but still showed enough to be alluring. With a malevolent grin, she donned it. He couldn't possibly look away from her now. She had almost finished her outfit. All she had to do now was add a few accessories to accentuate her outfit, and presto! She would make the boy drool like a fool. It was not surprising when Tenten unearthed an enormous belt with tiny kunai embedded in it, as she was always a girl who lived on the edge of things. Since it wasn't working, she never got to wear it, but today was a unique day. She located her heeled shoes and wrapped it around her waist. Excellent. Finally, the last pieces. Tenten's hair in buns had always been her favorite style. It was her signature, her calling card. She stood out because of it. When she needed those things, where on earth were they? At last, she exclaimed triumphantly and retrieved some of her most valuable belongings. Her mother, a strong kunoichi, is said to have owned a pair of tortoise-shell senbon needle style hairpins. Even though Tenten had never met her, she thanked the woman in a private prayer for her priceless heirloom. Tenten would go hungry before selling those hairpins if she ever ran out of money. To find the ideal position, she carefully inserted them into her buns and shifted them back and forth. She posed with one hand on her hip and one behind her head in front of her full-length mirror. Drop. Dead. Beautiful. Nothing would draw attention today if this look didn't. It was all for one man, too. She opened the door to go to the kitchen as the scent of food hit her nostrils once more. Blondie, here I come. Despite being angry at the angel, Naruto had grown accustomed to Sanosuke's abrupt departures after witnessing his disappearance. Damn it, he still wanted to learn how to do that. He turned to see Tenten in all her splendor as soon as he heard the pitter-patter of footsteps. She looked stunning in her attire. She wasn't even wearing fancy clothes. He was ecstatic about the girl with the bun hair for some reason. He tilted his head in bewilderment as Tenten started to giggle and stare at him. You'd better watch the stove, Naruto. You're going to burn breakfast. When he noticed that his eggs were about to be overcooked, he yelled and turned back to the stovetop. Before turning to butter some toast for them, he swiftly removed them and placed them on a plate. Tenten sat at her table and observed him as he went about the kitchen getting her breakfast. The thought made her smile. He was getting her breakfast. She gave it a suspicious look as he placed a plate in front of her. Although Naruto wasn't renowned for his culinary prowess, she still appreciated the gesture. She sighed to herself after cutting her eyes to see his worried expression. She grabbed her fork and dove in. It wasn't the worst thing she had ever eaten, but it wasn't bad either. It was more akin to field grub. Tasty enough to get by without making you wince. She grinned at him after swallowing her small portion of food. You'll do, but I'm going to have to teach you how to cook something other than eggs and toast. She almost burst out laughing at his sigh of relief. Even if it was just preparing breakfast for her, it was nice to have someone who wanted to impress her. As he started eating, she heard his fork clink and scooped up more for herself. As the two pushed the food down their throats, they stopped talking. Naruto picked up the plates and went to the sink after the meal was finished. Tenten gave him a startled look. Do the dishes and have breakfast? Many thanks, Cammy. Hey Naruto. Are you free today? He took a brief break before continuing to wash the plates. Yeah, I think so. Why, you got something planned? I just wanted to spend the day with you. After all, if we're a couple now, we need to spend as much time together as possible. Naruto appeared to be thinking about what she was saying as he sat there, but the longer he remained silent, the more annoyed she became. He found it hilarious that she was puffing out her cheeks in frustration, but he knew better than to keep her waiting. Of course, Tenten. We'll go as soon as you're ready. She scrunched her nose and sniffed the air, and he stopped talking. Naruto suddenly felt very self-conscious and gave her a sheepish smile while sniffing his clothes. His failure to return home following their brief altercation was not his fault. We're not going anywhere before you go home and shower and put on some decent clothing. My clothing's decent, something that doesn't smell like ass. Get going and then come back and get me. All right then. Want some company while I'm gone? Suichi is pretty good at go. Tenten watched with a shrug as the tiny toad poofed into being. What on earth? Where am I? Oh, boss. The hottie is also here. Ooh. Why are you calling me? Naruto smiled at Tenten as she flushed at being referred to as a hottie. She was adorable. I want you to entertain Tenten while I go home and get change. Play a game of Go with her or something. The small toad instantly covered his nose after smiling up at him. God damn it. There's an odor of ass. Naruto gritted his teeth while Tenten tried not to laugh. Stupid freaking frog. I don't smell like ass. I am a toad. And I didn't say you by name. Naruto, you better get going. It's not polite to keep a lady waiting. Naruto departed complaining that they shouldn't be able to respond to summons. Suichi turned to Tenten after he had left and extended his webbed hand. She opened a caramel and grinned. The tiny toad slapped its lips and tasted it. Many thanks for the hot stuff. You are aware that your boyfriend is too rigid? Tenten gestured for him to select his color after setting up the game board. The two sat down to play after the frog selected black. Yeah, he's a little wound tight, but that's only because of the situation he's in now. Trust me, you didn't want to see him like he was yesterday. Isn't that awful? He tore up a training ground with those chains of his like it was paper. He's pretty upset about having to stay with Team 7. I can't hold him responsible. According to what the old man and Gamakichi have told me, his team does not treat him well. And that means a lot to someone from Kichi. He is among the most relaxed toads I have ever encountered. He doesn't let anything affect him. Yeah, I know. Sakura and Kakashi are something else. I hope everything works out for him. With a laugh, the small toad set a stone on the board. Don't you think he has you? That ought to be sufficient. She gave the toad a smile but remained silent. Yes, that ought to be sufficient. Naruto returned quickly, but by then Tenten and Shuichi were engrossed in their game and didn't want to be disturbed. He chose to sit behind her on the couch and rub her shoulders, causing her head to bob back and forth as she relaxed and abandoned her plan. With a sly smile, the small toad made his final move. Compliment. I triumph. In blissful ignorance of her surroundings, Tenten simply sat there. MMMMHMMMM. Shuichi scoffed at the couple and scowled. I can take a hint, all right. Later, I'll see you two. Next time, I want more than one piece of candy. Tenten merely hummed joyfully as Naruto grunted at Shuichi. Right now, she couldn't possibly care less. She turned to him and moaned in dissatisfaction as he removed his hands. She was happy to see that he was dressed in a sleeveless white shirt with a Chinese motif and black baggy pants. But when she noticed that the chain was still in place, her brow furrowed. Can't you leave those things here for today? I just want a day with you without the chain on your arms. He gave her a sheepish smile while scratching his head. I don't know how to put this. I can't get rid of it. The best I can do is make it leave my body, but it won't go further than 10 feet. And it would be really freaky to have a chain following behind us like a snake. That thought made Tenten shudder. Naruto was despised enough already. It wasn't necessary for him to be stigmatized as a magician. Can you at least make it leave your arms? She observed the chain unwrapping from his arm and settling around his waist as he nodded. It was a far cry from normal, but it didn't look bad. That'll have to do, I suppose. So, shall we go? Naruto got to his feet and dragged her along with him. She gave him a suspicious look before he drew her close for a kiss, and she melted into him. He kept his eyes open and grinned when he sensed her attempting to deepen them despite her closed eyes. She crossed her arms and pouted as he withdrew. He put his arms around her and laughed. Now, Chan. Don't pout. As cute as you look right now, it doesn't become you and we need to get going. Tenten turned and gave him a look. Chan? I enjoy it. Well then, let's go. Getting some food and allowing themselves to wander, they spent the entire day having fun. Unexpectedly, it wasn't until right before dinner that they encountered any of their fellow ninja. Sakura turned her head upon seeing them, but she continued to watch Naruto. The others had heard about the couple's developing romance and were intrigued. Naturally, Kiba was the first to open his mouth. Oi Naruto. What the hell's with you and Tenten? You two a thing now? Naruto smiled at his animalistic companion and threw an arm around Tenten's shoulder. Yep, sure dog boy. You jealous? Nah, I've got all I can handle. Besides, plain girls aren't my thing. When the chain around Naruto's waist unwound and hung in midair in front of the dog lover's face, Kiba, who had not been around much since Naruto had acquired his new toys, quickly got to know them. He gazed at it, seeing it sway back and forth like a cobra ready to attack. Abruptly, it dropped and encircled Naruto's waist. Sorry about that. When I get upset, I push chakra into it unconsciously and it seems to have a mind of its own. My bad. But you shouldn't talk about Chan that way. She's not plain, she's beautiful. Everyone seemed to take notice of Tenten's attire at once, and they all gave him a critical look. To her credit, she handled the scrutiny quite well, though Naruto's comforting hand squeeze really made things go more smoothly. In her mind, she saw the smirk on Neji's face as he looked over her. Look what you missed, jerk. It's all Naruto's now. Never one to pass up an opportunity to make fun of her friends, Ino decided they were prime targets. She had to inquire about the new Naruto first, though. Hey Naruto. What's with the new look and everything? And what the hell is up with that chain? Naruto waved back to Tenten, smiling. She simply leaned against a wall and rolled her eyes. Fine then. But hurry up, I'm getting hungry. Yes ma'am, Miss Tenten, ma'am. Don't be a smartass. As they crawled back onto his arms, Naruto simply smirked at her over his shoulder and pushed chakra into the chains. As this occurred, the group watched in wonder, but Neji and Lee watched warily. They were aware of the potential of those chains. As the chains came to life and Naruto crossed his arms, the group watched. Knowing what was going to happen, Neji and Lee started to back away, but they stopped when the chains rubbed against one another and made that terrible screech sound. Everyone turned to watch Naruto as he laughed. I hope you all have good reflexes because these things are unforgiving. And trust me when I say, they'll hurt you. Neji watched the swaying objects and raised his voice. Might I ask why you say chain in a plural sense, Naruto? There's only one after all. With a quick jab at Kiba from one end, Naruto shrugged and smiled back at the group. Because when the chain does this, it seems like both ends have a mind of their own. They don't attack in unison. They attack as a tandem with different goals. It's just easier on my mind to use a plural form for the word. Okay. Now then, I believe you all need to dodge. They were all scattered as the chains flew at them. Lee and Neji flipped up onto a rooftop and out of the way. Only after he was warmed up and confident that he could avoid them would Lee be open to training with those things. The others started to turn over and flee. Out of the remaining players, Kiba and Hinata fared the best because they could dodge with the greatest flexibility. Leaning against a wall and attempting to avoid drawing attention to themselves, Shikamaru and Choji bowed out early. Shino was discovered on the rooftop next to Neji and Lee after appearing to just dissolve into a shower of Kikai bugs. As Naruto watched his friends jump around like children on crack, he was having a great time. Behind him, he could hear Tenten laughing, and the tuneful sound made him happy. He grabbed the two main instigators, Sakura and Ino, and held them upside down by their ankles after deciding he had had enough fun for the day. Although Sakura was not amused, Ino found the entire situation to be rather cool. Put me down, Naruto, now. Naruto glanced at her, his smile faltering slightly. I don't believe you're in any position to demand anything from me. I'm the one in control at the moment. I don't care. Put me down before I make you. Everyone in the room thought the temperature had dropped a few degrees as Naruto's eyes shifted to slits. Ino attempted to run damage control since it was closest to ground zero. Now guys, don't be like that, Sakura, it was all in good fun. But neither was paying attention, so Ino scooted over to Tenten, figuring it would be the safest place to be, while the chains held her down. Tenten, shouldn't you do something? Like what? Like stop them. They could hurt each other. Tenten scoffed, staring at Ino as if she had grown another head. Anything that pink-haired bitch gets will be too good for her. This confrontation has been a long time coming. I just wish it didn't have to happen on one of our only free days off today. I really just wanted to relax. Although, watching Naruto beat the shit out of Sakura is a close second. When she heard that, Ino grimaced in horror and turned back to see Naruto's face darkening every second. It seemed as though he had developed a level of rage that was unattainable and unworthy of being attained. Sakura continued her little tirade and saw Naruto's lip twitch, the fang behind it clearly getting bigger. She had heard about Naruto's conversation with the Hokage and his excessively frightful departure. Suddenly, a quiet, uncanny voice filled the room. Haruno, shut up. The blonde in front of them stunned the 9 ninja who were watching. He hadn't raised his voice in the slightest, but his speech was as sharp and direct as the edge of a knife. When Tenten heard her boyfriend's voice, Ino noticed that she shuddered. It was not a nice thing. I am tired of you believing that you hold some form of power over me. I am stuck with you and Hitaki for the time being, but I will not subject myself to being your punching bag or his whipping boy anymore. I thought I made this abundantly clear when we came back from our last mission. The Uchiha is lost to us and the two of you need to realize that. I'm tired of chasing shadows. Now, I follow my own path. Sakura was intelligent, but she also had a stubborn streak that was on par with Naruto's, and the years she had spent harassing him didn't help her personality either. Who in the hell do you think you are? We're a team Naruto, and that means we do what Kakashi Sensei tells us to do. You don't have a say in the matter. When the chain around her ankles gave way violently and she was confronted by her blonde teammate, her breath caught. As Naruto flashed his teeth, everyone held their breath. The silver appeared to shine, and his eyes glinted horribly. I will do what the Hokage orders me to do, Haruno, not Hitaki. I am sick of playing these little games because of the Uchiha and I will brook no further discussion on this subject. Know that if I ever come across him, I will kill him and send him to final judgment. I know what my role is here, but do you know yours? In her mind, Ino had repeatedly told Sakura to stop talking, but the girl refused to be quiet, and Naruto was growing angrier by the moment. I know you're being an asshole. I know you wanted to rescue Sasuke as much as Kakashi and me did just a few months ago, and now you say you don't care. That's bullshit. What happened to the Naruto who wanted to help his friends? Tenten vowed to intervene if this continued, as the coldness of his voice sent shivers down everyone's spine. That bastard has tried to kill me on numerous occasions and I, for one, am sick of dying to bring him back. For Cammy's sake, Haruno, he basically did kill me that last mission. I died and met Cammy. What does that say, huh? Do you think Sasuke cares about us? Tell me, I want to know. He's just messed up in the head because of that seal. He needs our help to come back home. He needs to be cleansed through death. That seal can't be removed, and the true power behind it is that a person has to want the power from the seal. They have to want to be Orochimaru's little sex toy. And Sasuke wanted the power, he wanted the abilities it gave him, and he wanted to be Orochimaru's penis sheath at night. Plain and simple. No two ways about it. Tenten had been composed until that moment, but she burst out laughing when she heard Naruto make such a joke about Sasuke and Orochimaru. When Naruto heard her, he pretended not to laugh, but he was actually laughing uncontrollably. He was just beginning to feel better. Tenten seems to have that effect on him. When Sakura opened her mouth once more, causing Ino to sigh at her foolishness. You're just mad because Sasuke has always been better than you and you can't beat him in a fight. I totally understand, Naruto. Why bother to try to bring back someone who you can't beat? When Sakura realized what she had said, her hands instantly went to her mouth, and the surrounding air seemed to vanish in a vacuum. Naruto's head hung and his hair hung limply in front of his blue and silver eyes, making it impossible for anyone to see them. The teenagers all waited for him to do something. Kill her, blow her up, or take her head off. Rather, they were perplexed when he threw back his head and started laughing as if he had gone completely insane. Sakura was set down by the chain and fled to safety behind Ino, who gave her a scornful look. Tenten was a little afraid that Naruto had finally lost it and was about to lose his mind. She touched his arm as she moved slowly forward. She slipped in front of him and ran her hands over his cheeks as he quieted at her touch. Naruto? Are you okay? She was surprised to see that he was completely fine when he lifted his eyes to meet hers. Her soft-spoken Naruto, whom everyone adored, was in front of her. He gave her a smile and gave her a hug. I'm perfectly fine, Chan. I've just had a revelation of how I'm viewed by some people. That's all. Let's go get something to eat. I'm famished. When Tenten put his arm around her shoulders, he simply nodded and let out a joyful sigh. The other members of the group watched in awe of Naruto's ability to handle everything and not lose his cool around Sakura. Twice as frightening as his fox transformations was his serene manner. As Tenten and Naruto passed by, Sakura opened her mouth to apologize, but Ino covered it with a hand clap. Ino spoke softly into the girl's ear. Don't say a damn thing. You've made things bad enough today, don't make it worse. What do you mean worse? Just shut up and let things go. Just let it go. As Naruto and Tenten vanished into the distance, the group watched. Lee's normally wide eyes cracked as wide as they could go as he turned to face Neji. Neji, my most youthful rival, let us swear never to anger Naruto-kun if we can help it. He is scarier than anything our worst enemies could throw at us. Neji gave a nod and turned to face the spot where his teammate and friend had vanished. And on a tear, I thought Sama was terrible. She kept staring at the boy in front of her as Tenten and Naruto sat in the restaurant, wondering how the gentle, kind boy in front of her and the holy terror she had seen earlier could be the same person. Naruto, why did you do that earlier? You were frightening. With a sigh, he grabbed her hand from across the table. Chan, know that I will never harm you, I will never betray your trust. Sakura and Kakashi are just able to push my buttons. I just can't seem to get along with them lately. Maybe I just can't put up with them anymore. I think you'll do fine, Naruto. Just don't let them bait you like Sakura did. Just do the mission and come back home to me. I'll make it worth your while. When their food was delivered, Naruto grinned and thanked the waitress. You don't have to entice me, Chan. I'll always come back to you. Good. So what are we going to do the rest of the night? I don't know. You tell me. Naruto raised an eyebrow and gave Tenten a cocked look as she smiled and leaned in toward him. Are you going to fall asleep tonight at midnight? I don't think so. Any particular reason why? Tenten's smile almost made her face break. Because we got interrupted last night when you passed out and I wanted to fully initiate my new boyfriend in the pleasures of dating the weapons mistress of Konoha. This isn't going to hurt, is it? Oh sweetie, it'll hurt so good, you won't want me to stop. I thought we were going to make out, not fight a full-scale battle. She batted her eyelashes and shrugged. What's the difference with us? I promise not to cut you too deep. As Naruto considered a compromise, a tiny bit of fear crept into his eyes. Tell you what. You leave the weapons out of this and I'll give you a massage, deal? He was so relieved by the forceful nod that he released a breath he was unaware he had been holding. One crisis was avoided. I would prefer not to learn about some of her more creative kunai uses, particularly in private moments. The following morning, Naruto opened his eyes to discover Tenten lying on top of him after waking up with a weight on his chest. She crinkled her nose cutely as he kissed the tip of it and grinned at her serene figure. He laughed as she tucked herself back into his arms. Naruto had never even had a chance to give her that massage before they both passed out following a passionate makeout session. Well, there's never a better moment than now. He created a shadow clone to prepare breakfast for the two of them after squirming out from under the kunoichi. He carefully pushed her shirt up to her shoulders, not wanting her to stab him with a kunai that she might pull out of some hidden place. When he saw her bare back, he arched an eyebrow. When he was massaging her back last night, he had assumed that she was not resisting. She was naturally that vivacious, which he had not realized. Then he remembered the chain around his waist, and when he saw it was missing, he went to send it away. He looked around the room and saw it curled up like a cobra in a chair. It appeared to lift a little and jerk its end toward him, then slowly return to rest on its length. The clone had also been observing and voiced its thoughts. That thing is creepy when it does things like that. The girl moaned in her sleep as the original Naruto nodded and started massaging Tenten's sides. After applying more pressure until she was groaning, he moved to her shoulders and gave them a vigorous rub before gently dancing his fingertips down her spine to her pants line. Tenten's drowsy voice filtered through the pillow she was resting on just as he was about to climb back up. Just take him off. I don't mind. Ten-chan, are you awake? I'll take that as a no. He decided not to take off her trousers and proceeded back up her back, causing her to groan once more. He resolved to do this to her as frequently as he could. Given how frequently she used her muscles, she would undoubtedly appreciate it. Right now, Tenten was in heaven. It was the most relaxed morning she had ever experienced. Her back felt great now, even though whatever warm object she had been cuddling had gone away. Her back had never felt this good in the morning. She opened her eyes drowsily and let out another sigh of pleasure as her spine was assaulted by faint tapping. Oh God, I'll marry whoever is doing this, even if it is a dream. Well, I hope you'll keep that open in mind in the future, Ten-chan. I happen to like doing this. Her head turned to see Naruto smiling broadly as her eyes snapped open at the soft, warm voice behind her. Should I keep going or are you warmed up already? Is breakfast ready yet? No, the clone yelled. Well, I guess you better keep going then. Don't ever stop. When a pop was heard and Kakashi appeared with his well-known book in front of his face, Naruto laughed and started to tend to his needs. When he heard moans from the floor and noticed Naruto sitting on Tenten's legs massaging her back, the older man arched an eyebrow and turned to look around. The two gave him a stern look as he coughed into his hand. When she asked Tenten why he was there, he was very grumpy. The Hokage wants both of you in her office at 10 o'clock, and be sure to wear clothes. He was laughing at his own joke when he heard Tenten groan once more and realized they had not replied. His irritated eye twitched. He was being ignored. Amid Tenten's sighs of satisfaction, Naruto interrupted him as he was about to remark on their rudeness. You shouldn't enter people's houses like that, Itachi. You might find unpleasant surprises waiting for you. I don't see how a half-naked girl is unpleasant. Tenten gave the gray-haired Junin a glare and grinned when she saw what Naruto was discussing, and Naruto covered her body with his own. I wasn't talking about that, Itachi. Look behind you. Kakashi froze, turning his head. Naruto's chain was behind him, slithering back and forth like a snake ready to attack. It would have ended for him if that thing had struck him in the head. With a nervous laugh, he vanished in a cloud of smoke. Sighing into Tenten's hair, Naruto leapt to his feet. With a growl of disapproval, the girl extended her hand. Grabbing it, Naruto dragged her up and into his arms. They stood there for a full minute until his clone informed them that breakfast was ready after she locked her lips to his. Reluctantly, they parted ways and took seats at the table where the clone placed plates. It dispelled it after attempting to feel Tenten's chest with a kunai between its eyes. No one but Naruto touches me. Naruto chuckled and got to work. But Ten-chan, essentially that was me. Oh yeah, well, if that's essentially you then. She sank her teeth into her face with gusto as a silly smile appeared on her face. What are you thinking? About the future and how fun it might be. Do I want to know? Not unless you want the blood to rush to your head? After giving her a sardonic glance, Naruto shrugged and resumed his meal. I like surprises better anyway. Tenten had persuaded Kakashi that the scroll in which he kept his hammer was not enough after he had left. It was a little perplexing that this was coming from a weapons mistress who only used scrolls, but he chose to pay attention. A seal disguised as a tattoo would look better on him, she had told him, but scrolls were great for her because they were part of her style. She sat down to start the process after he enthusiastically agreed. The seal would graft to his skin when the ink and his blood were combined. Although it was a challenging procedure, Naruto had not been a seal master for nothing. By studying his own seals, he gained some knowledge about them. He sat patiently while Tenten cut his arm and the blood poured into a bowl, then the wound closed with a hiss and a little steam. Tenten had chosen the design she wanted. She found this fascinating. She could have spent the entire day sitting there and observing that. It was truly remarkable. However, she concentrated on combining the blood and ink, and after applying a basic storage seal to his left arm, she covered it with a whirlpool leaf design. It effectively concealed the seal, giving the impression that it was a benign tattoo. She grafted the ink and blood to his skin permanently by channeling some of her chakra into them. She exhaled a little, then sat back and appreciated her work. It wasn't too bad. After making sure the seal was firmly in place with a tap and a finger rub, Naruto touched it with the head of his hammer and pumped a tiny bit of chakra into it. The hammer vanished into thin air. With a smile on his face, Naruto drew his chain around Tenten's right arm, then it wound around his waist and down his back. His hammer jumped into his hand as he made an experimental swipe across the seal. Tenten saw Naruto's plan and gave him a firm slap on the arm just as he was about to give it a few test swings. He put it away with a sheepish smile and tapped the hammer over the seal. "You know, just because we're in a relationship doesn't mean you can destroy my house. Now I believe you should go home and get ready to go. Lady Tsunade will want us there soon. Actually, if you'll let me use your shower, I brought a change of clothes in a scroll. That way we can leave together." "Fine, but hurry. It took up a lot of time making that seal and I want to take one too." While Tenten organized her living room and laid out her clothes and weapons, Naruto nodded and went to take a quick shower. Whatever was needed by both of them was most likely not good. People walking along the path were staring at Tenten, and he didn't like it. The looks aimed at Tenten were really beginning to bother him, but he didn't mind the ones aimed at him. Naruto snarled and his hand went to the seal when an elderly jerk had the gall to call her a demon whore. However, Tenten's hand covered the mark before he could remove the hammer, and he gazed at her inquisitively. Leaning closer, she whispered to him while shaking her head. "I knew what being with you would entail. Let me bear the burden with you. I consider it a privilege and you've stood on your own 2 feet for too long. Let me shoulder some of the weight." "But Chan, this is my burden and mine alone. Why would you want to shoulder even a tiny bit?" Grinning, she took his arm and dragged him along. "Because you've walked alone your whole life and now I wish to walk beside you. What's mine is yours and what's yours is mine. Get used to it. You're not alone anymore." When he drew her closer and she noticed the glint of tears beneath his eyes, she gave herself permission to smile a little. She could have had more light in her own life if she had recognized him sooner. When Tenten and Naruto entered, Tsunade was, for once, awake. When she noticed the tattoo on Naruto's arm, she arched an eyebrow. He then revealed his hammer by swiping his hand over the seal. With a nod, Tsunade closed it once more. She put her chin on her hands and crossed them in front of her face. "I assume you two know why you were called here." The new couple exchanged a questioning glance before shrugging. Tsunade rubbed her temples and sighed. How could she possibly have bothered to use Kakashi as a messenger? "I see that my choice of errand boy was not very wise. I'll try to rectify that in the future. I called you two here to tell you that you're both going on a mission tomorrow." A smile came to Naruto's face. "Just the two of us?" "No, you'll be going with Sakura and Kakashi, and me? You'll be going with them as well. Think of yourself as an unofficial member for the time being to take some of the pressure off Naruto until the three of them learn to get along again. Just try not to take sides, stay neutral if you can. That might be kind of hard considering how they treat him, but I'll try. Please do. I know that you're the more responsible of the two of you." "Hey, it's not a dig at you Naruto, it's just a fact. Tenten can keep you in check and make sure the other two don't go overboard." "Lady Tsunade, why aren't Sakura and Kakashi here? I wanted to talk to you two alone without them. They seem to have a most adverse effect on Naruto and his attitude at the moment. Don't worry about your own team Tenten. They'll do fine." "So how are we going to do this Chan?" Tsunade smiled as Tenten scowled and gave him a backhand to the head. "Don't disrespect the Hokage. I wasn't, she is old. It's just a cold, hard fact. That isn't an excuse. Be respectful or I'll do something." Naruto looked at her wryly. "That's the best you could come up with?" The girl with the bun shrugged. I'm not good with thinking up threats on the spot. Just know that it won't be pleasurable for you. Just don't hurt me too much or you don't get any more massages. Tsunade found this fascinating. What's this about massages? Tenten let out a joyful sigh as her eyes took on a distant expression. Oh yeah, that was a great way to wake up. Tsunade's eyebrows lifted a few more centimeters, and Naruto flushed. Tenten cut both of her eyes and covered her mouth with a hand. I said that out loud, didn't I? Yes you did, young lady. I'd appreciate it if you kept your love life to yourself, although, if he's actually good at being a masseuse, if you're willing to share. I think I prefer to keep him to myself, if it's all the same to you, and he's an excellent masseuse. Alright then, but if you change your mind and would like to share, I'll keep it in mind. As they discussed him as if he were a toy, Naruto had been moving his head back and forth between the two women, his mouth moving southward ever more. I'm sitting right here, you know. The two women shushed him after glancing at him. In response, he closed his eyes and leaned back in his chair. He was no longer required for this discussion. He made the decision to continue training with the chain and started weaving it to create shapes in the air. He wasted time playing without realizing that Tsunade and Tenten had stopped talking and were watching him intently. The two women observed the chain forming a tree, a sailboat, and a crosshatch before starting to move into more intricate shapes. While Tsunade's thoughts were on the potential ways this boy could help missions run smoothly, Tenten felt a little proud of her boyfriend's amazing abilities. The possibilities were endless if he could get the chain to behave like Gaara's sand through improved control. When Sakura entered, Tenten and Tsunade were discussing her relationship with Naruto as if they were old friends, and Naruto was bending his hammer through loops created by the chain. The girl with the pink hair felt a little envious of Tenten. Like a lost puppy, Naruto would follow her around and hang off of her. How could she have made him feel uncomfortable around her? Kakashi had been equally perplexed by the blonde's actions. It appeared that he had never given any thought to what they had said or done to him before. While the others waited for Kakashi, she sat in a chair by the door and let them continue. Before Tsunade could harm him or his priceless book, he still had 10 minutes to get there. Sakura had plenty of time to think about her predicament. Naruto had never objected to her hitting him before, and if he did, it was never evident. He would return demanding more if she were to verbally castrate him. He would still have nominated her for sainthood even if she had actually killed him. Now, however, he was as likely to suffocate her with that chain or beat her to death with that hammer as he was to recognize her at all. A hole in Tenten's head was glared by her. She must be to blame for Naruto's misbehavior. And in one way or another, she would make things right. Tsunade had wanted to tear a few pages out of that damnable book, so she was disappointed when Kakashi showed up precisely on time. Eyeing the chain that seemed to follow his every move, the one-eyed ninja had clearly eased his way around Naruto, who had not even looked at him. If it weren't for the huge hammer with the spike on the end that was following him like a criminal, it wouldn't have been nearly as frightening. Both Tenten and Tsunade noticed the smirk that appeared on Naruto's face, even though he was still sitting in the lotus position on the floor with his eyes closed. It appeared that he had taken up torturing Kakashi as a new hobby. All right, Naruto, put the hammer away and take a seat. You four are, for the time being, a team until I say otherwise. You will take the missions I give you and follow them to the letter. Your first few will be some small C ranks to get you eased into working together. After those we'll move up to B rank and so on. Tenten will be here to help Naruto ease back into his role on your team. Naruto, you are to follow what Kakashi says, understood? Reluctantly, he nodded his head. Even though he didn't like it, Kakashi was his boss. Good. Kakashi, I want you to take into account that Naruto is not the brat you used to push aside. He will follow your orders on a mission, but after that, you have no bearing, understood? As long as he does what I say, I have no problems there, but he will follow my instructions and obey my orders, regardless of what they may be. Tenten could swear the temperature dropped a few degrees as Naruto narrowed his eyes. And if I don't agree with those orders, Hitaki, what then? You'll follow them or I'll deal with you, plain and simple. Oh really? And what might these side orders be perhaps? Rescuing a certain ungrateful, traitorous brat of the village? Kakashi glared at the blonde as his visible eye narrowed. If the opportunity comes up to capture him and a fight is unavoidable, then yes, I expect you to do what you're told. If it comes down to a fight with the Uchiha, the only way he'll be returning to Konoha is in a body bag courtesy of my hammer. The wood creaked under Tsunade's weight as she slammed her palm down on her desk. That's enough. If the two of you want to play Billy Badass, then go to the training grounds and beat the shit out of each other. Get this out of your systems today or I'll demote you both. Naruto sneered at Kakashi as he stood there. Training ground 23, 5 minutes, be there. I'll beat you there, brat. Naruto quickly vanished despite Tenten's best efforts to stop him. In an attempt to stop them, she hurried out the door right away. Sakura turned her wide-eyed gaze to Tsunade. Aren't you going to stop them? They could get hurt. The only one going to get hurt is Kakashi. Anything he does to Naruto will be healed by tomorrow. If Naruto catches him, however, he won't be going on the mission with you more than likely. Then we have to stop them. Hell no, I'm going to watch and I'm alerting the other Junin on my way. It isn't often you get to see Hitaki Kakashi put in his place. Sakura was left in confusion as Tsunade shunned out. On the other side of the door, she could hear Shizune running to the field. Hoping to arrive in time, she dashed for the field. Kakashi. Sensei was too strong for Naruto to defeat, could he? When Sakura got to the field, almost all of the Junin that were available were standing outside the training area. To serve as a mediator, Tsunade had placed herself between Naruto and Kakashi. She walked over to her friends after noticing that the majority of them were also present. As soon as Ino spotted her, she was pulled over. Sakura, what the hell is going on? Tenten won't say anything except to Lee and Neji. Why are Kakashi and Naruto fighting? I don't really know. We were all talking to Lady Tsunade and suddenly the two started bristling like a couple of dogs and wanted to fight. I'm not sure what happened. Personally, I think it's been a long time coming. When the two girls turned to face the speaker, they saw Aburame Shino standing there with Hinata and Kiba at his sides. Sakura gave the Bugmaster a fierce look. What do you mean, long time coming? This is totally out of the blue. Not so. Frankly, if I were Naruto, I would have excommunicated myself from you too long ago. This fight has been coming for a long time. Be glad it is Kakashi and not you. What does that mean? It means that Naruto either takes pity on you or just hasn't gotten around to pummeling you into the dirt yet. Sakura. Consider yourself lucky. Fuck you, Kiba. Hinata pointed to the three in the center of the clearing and shushed the others. Shish. It's starting. Tsunade shifted her gaze between the two. For a long time, this confrontation had been simmering. Kakashi's attitude toward his student had always been patronizing. Naruto had always aimed to improve and meet his sensei's expectations. However, it was never to be because of the Uchiha's shadow over them both. It had now reached this point. A teacher and student are fighting with each other. She raised her hand and inhaled deeply. There will be no death blows struck. I have need of you too. Anything else goes, however. Now are you ready? They were, as two nods attested. Then, begin. When Tsunade jumped back, neither man moved. They waited for an indication that they should move quickly. When Naruto crossed his arms and remained motionless like a statue, Kakashi stiffened. Kakashi rushed forward without any flags visible and struck Naruto in the face, but that chain stopped his fist in its tracks. His knuckles cracked against the steel, causing him to wince. He jumped back, clutching his hand. That was a cheap trick, Naruto. There are no cheap tricks, Hitaki. Only those that you, yourself, are afraid to try or can't. Kakashi's response was to jump back even farther while indicating a fire jutsu. He spat out a massive fireball at the peak of his leap, and to his surprise, Naruto did not twitch a muscle. After landing, he saw the chain spin, creating a barrier that blew the flames to the sides and spread them out. Kakashi hurried forward once more without saying anything more. Taijutsu would have to be used since jutsus wouldn't work. He could get inside that chain if he accelerated. He kicked out and was stopped by the chain's tip, but he then swung his fist and was struck by another section. He snarled and twisted, catching Naruto in the side of the head as he lunged for a mule kick. After a brief smirk, he grimaced upon realizing that his kick had failed to make contact. The boy's foot and face were separated by that fucking chain. A mad smile appeared on Naruto's face as he turned his head. My turn. Kakashi was thrown across the grounds after the chain abruptly wrapped around his legs and twirled him around a few times. After landing, Kakashi remained low to the ground, awaiting the outcome. Naruto grasped his hammer in his right hand and ran his hand over the seal on his arm. He tapped it playfully against his left hand and hurried on. Dance for me. Tenten had been completely engrossed in the fight. Her surroundings were meaningless. Not Lee droning on about how young Naruto was. Not the slack, jawed evaluation of Naruto's abilities by Neji. When Kakashi would become serious and unleash the Sharingan was a mystery to some. All of that was irrelevant. The fact that Naruto was defeating one of the village's top ninjas was what counted. Right now, her man was putting all she had taught him and all she had helped create to use. The chain was absolutely devastating, and his stance was perfect. He appeared to her to be a god sent to administer divine wrath. He was graceful and deadly and beautiful. Her angel was him. While she watched him fight, he, her boyfriend, was making her feel attracted to him. Tonight, He was staying at her house. It was the most backtracking Kakashi had ever done. The boy kept coming as if he had something to prove, even though he had the Sharingan out, was flinging jutsus around like candy at a parade, and had even taken a few blows that were potentially fatal, at least to regular ninjas. It was bad news about that hammer. The spike would cut him if he ducked a swipe just enough. The chain lunged at him if he ducked too far. The chain would prevent him from entering the boy's guard. He would simply stand there and wait for Kakashi to initiate contact if he attempted to use the Sharingan to follow the boy's movements. The boy would use the hammer to block any jutsu he attempted. It was really annoying. Naruto was enjoying himself immensely. He refuted all of Kakashi's attacks, and if faint muscle tremors were any guide, Kakashi was starting to lose his temper. However, he decided to end the game quickly because he was beginning to grow weary of it. It would never be known to the copy ninja what had struck him. Hell, years later, he was still attempting to figure out how he did it. Naruto swiftly swept past Kakashi's guard and confronted the elderly man directly. Kakashi froze for a split second for no apparent reason, but Naruto only needed that. Before Naruto slammed his hammer into the man's face, the chain encircled his arms and legs, immobilizing him. However, he had already performed Kawarimi and was waiting for the blow to land on a tree branch. A whistle above him was the last thing he recalled before everything went dark. Naruto had long since switched to a bunshin. Hell, she hadn't even noticed that he had been standing next to Tenten as a regular spectator. Dropping his henge, he leapt to his feet and clobbed the man with his hammer when he saw Kakashi Kawarimi on a tree branch above him. The copy ninja flew back into the clearing, skidding a good 20 feet before he stopped on his face and flopped to the ground, having been without lights. Tsunade had gathered her wagers from the naive Junins and cheered for her favorite blonde. Who in their right mind would choose Kakashi over a Jinchuriki with Cammy's approval, really? Sakura was astounded, as was everyone else in the crowd. The copy nin had lost not just to his pupil but also to the dead last. To have to live up to that stigma was extremely difficult. It would stay in the village, if he was lucky. To the surprise of all their friends and the covert chagrin of Sakura and Neji, Tenten had locked Naruto in an embrace and given him a large, wet kiss after everyone had trudged off, with many complaining about losing to the Hokage. "You are so bad, Naruto. I mean, really, you just beat Kakashi. That's one for the record books. Come on sweetie, let's get some ramen and celebrate and then we're going back to my place." "That sounds good, but why are we going back to your place?" She licked her lips and gave him a very seductive look. "Because I'm going to give you a victory massage and then you're going to give me one. If you're a good boy, I might give you an extra special massage." Naruto shuddered as she whispered in his ear while leaning in and licking the lobe sensuously. "In your pants." Tenten sighed and wiped the blood from her boyfriend's nose while sitting with his head in her lap. She leaned against his hammer and giggled. He was undoubtedly staying over. Sitting inside the boundaries of the tree she had been assigned, Tenten frowned. She had not succeeded in fostering good relations between Naruto and the other two after several months of missions and assistance, and she was starting to grow tired of them all. Naruto had assured her that he would try his hardest for her, but as time passed, he tended to back off. He simply could not tolerate Kakashi's icy indifference or Sakura's taunts. And over time, she was unable to do so either. Guy, Neji, and Lee had seemed difficult to her. The Sunset Genjutsu had seemed to her like the most terrible form of torture in the world. Neji's apathy had seemed to her to be the most agonizing and grating thing in the world. However, she had never had to endure the tardiness and laziness of Kakashi, the bitchiness of Sakura, or the overly optimistic and bullheaded attitude of Naruto, and she was starting to miss her former team. For the sake of what she referred to as normalcy, she would have endured a man's embrace. It hadn't all been bad, though. She had experienced enough positive moments from Naruto to offset the negative. He had been the perfect boyfriend, buying her things, putting up her tent, and doing anything he could to help her. And that only applied to missions. He had finally realized that Tenten was not a fragile flower that required continual watch after the first few times he had attempted to protect her from harm, and to have his ass handed to him by an irate and insulted Kunoichi after the mission was over. Even though his overprotectiveness of her was admirable and kind of cute, she could manage herself just fine. But none of this was helping her current predicament. Naruto was once again playing frontman in Wrecking Ball, and this mission was far more challenging than the previous ones. They had to try to purge the world of a number of missing nins by breaking into their nest. This specific group, which was a mashup of ninja from various villages, had started raiding caravans and villages in that region of Fire Country. All of them, murderers, rapists, thieves, traitors. Additionally, when Naruto was focused, he showed no mercy to those ninjas. She shuddered when she recalled a specific leaf ninja who had abandoned their house and made the decision to steal a scroll that the village held in high regard. Once Naruto had finished with him, he left a particularly offensive smudge on the ground. To any Cammy or Konoha adversary, that hammer was bad business. Naruto had told Tsunade that any mission Cammy assigned him would take precedence over any Konoha given missions. Additionally, he had already performed a few that Tenten was unaware of. Every time, he would return and merely request to spend the night at her house. He would simply hold her close in bed and press his head into her hair, which made those nights difficult even though she didn't mind and was even happy about it. She had not questioned him about a holy mission since the first time he had entered in that manner. Pulling the kunoichi away from her weapon, which was polishing and shining, Naruto staggered to Tenten's door and knocked loudly. They were going to get a serious beating, but she had no idea who the fool was who had interrupted her. Me. Time. She yanked the door open while growling, gasping at what she saw beyond. Naruto stood with a vacant expression on his face and was covered in blood from head to toe. Although it was soon determined that the blood was not his, Tenten was troubled by his eyes. They were so lifeless, so frigid. She noticed a rut in the road behind him, which was a clear indication that he had been dragging his hammer. He asked if he could come in, his voice cracking. With a tentative nod, she led him inside. Tenten, can I use your shower? I need to get this blood off. Tenten gave him a nod and led the way. He had stayed over many times since that altercation with Kakashi, so he didn't need it. Do you need me to get you anything, Naruto? Yes, if you don't mind going to my apartment and getting a set of clothing for me. With a nod, she ran to his apartment. She quickly went to get a change of clothes and rushed back. She heard sobbing and hurried to the door as she entered and made her way to her bathroom. Naruto. Naruto was on his knees, clutching his stomach, crying like a scared child when she carefully opened the door and slid the curtain back. Tenten stepped into the shower after dropping the clothes. When he flinched and looked at her, she touched his shoulder and jerked back. It's okay, baby, just let it all out. With the water tumbling around them and concealing his tears, she embraced him and held him while he processed whatever it was he had done. In all the time she had known him, she had never seen him so exposed, and it alarmed her. He had always been an indestructible, untouchable pillar of strength. And what on earth could have made him lose it? As they crawled into bed, she didn't ask him, and he clung to her as if she were his only hope for survival. The following morning, she didn't ask him. She told him that was her purpose, even though he had apologized for placing her in that situation. She wanted to be his emotional support system and was his girlfriend. She only needed the smile and sincere gratitude she got in return. She tensed as she watched her man jump out of his tree and saunter towards the missing nins, but her memories of the past were cut short when Kakashi abruptly signaled the party to begin. It was time for the show. The arrangement that Naruto had been given did not satisfy him. He was aware that this was retribution for telling Kakashi that he could place it in an area with no sunlight during the previous mission. He was designated as the point man for this mission by the Cycloptic Junin, which meant that Naruto would be handling all the labor and the others would come in to clean up. Normally, he wouldn't mind, but this time, he was compelled to do so, and he detested having to obey Kakashi's commands. The situation was made worse by Sakura's sneer after he was warned that he would either do it or face consequences for his insubordination. His faithful girlfriend and the kiss she'd given him before hurrying off to take her place were the only things preventing him from killing the two and calling it a day. At times, he was unable to recall his activities without Tenten's assistance. When he saw Kakashi's signal, he jumped out of his tree and dismissed those thoughts. He swept his hand over his seal and his hammer poofed into existence as he crept silently to the edge of the fire. After assessing the opposition, he made the decision to eliminate the strongest one first. He calmly walked into the clearing after locking onto the one with the lowest rating in the bingo book and throwing his hammer as hard as he could. The unfortunate A-rank Junin had never anticipated the enormous weapon, but he heard the displacement of air and attempted to stand up, only to be crushed beneath the hammer's weight and have his spinal cord severed by the metal spike. All of the other ninjas jumped up and prepared for the impending attack. How taken aback they were to see a single young man enter the light. Naruto entered the campsite nonchalantly and paused at the outer ring of light. His eyes scanned his opponents and he was unimpressed, but his head remained motionless. Despite the fact that there were many small fry, he had already eliminated the largest obstacle. Well, look what we got here, guys. A little baby ninja who thinks that he can take on a whole group of his superiors. None of the missing nins cared that the most powerful of them had been killed by what may have been the heaviest hammer in the world. They all laughed. They were all confused and oblivious to the most obvious truth. That Naruto was not normal, because of their arrogance and laziness. I believe that a superior is someone who is acknowledged as being your better, and none of you have earned that right in my eyes yet. If you defeat me, then I shall most definitely call you my superiors. Don't count on that though. None of you will be left alive tonight. When Naruto heard a squealing sound, he turned to see a woman in priestess robes who was gagged and bound. The way she was dressed and the evidence of rape and torture caused his eyes to narrow. His icy blue eyes focused on the ninja he had seen lying there moments before. Pointing at that ninja, he raised a finger. You. Did you defile that priestess of a holy order? The man spat on the ground and sneered. I sure did. Virgin pussy is always the best and nothing gets me going like a chick crying. Why? What are you going to do about it? As Naruto sank into a crouch and snarled at the ninja group, his teammates gasped as his chakras surged and the chain came to life, making that terrible screeching sound. You'll be the first to die. No one should have to lose their virginity to someone they don't love and no one should be subjected to rape. I hope you have no regrets as I send you to meet the Shinigami. The chain shot forward and impaled the rapist in the forehead before he could speak, piercing through and out the back. The chain moved on its own as Naruto pushed the man down and kicked the next man, but no one had noticed him move as he now stood nose to nose with the man. Without regard for their fellow campers, the missing ninja all attempted to strike him but were unsuccessful. As a man in possession, Naruto moved between them, using the chain and kunai to strike out. When he came to a particularly well-known ninja from the bingo book who had raped and killed children, he put the chain around his neck, snapped it, tore the head off the body, and used the disembodied skull to strike the closest man over the head. Sakura was afraid she would lose her lunch. Kakashi felt appalled. Tenten believed that everything was justified. Horrible crimes had been committed by these men. An eye for an eye, after all. She slipped in and shook the priestess' shoulder as Naruto tore the ninjas apart one by one, causing the girl to look scared. Shish, it's alright. We're ninja from Konoha and we're here to help you. Let's get out of here before we get caught up in Naruto's crossfire. As Tenten assisted her, the girl nodded and attempted to walk, but her ankles were too chafed from being bound, and her legs were barely receiving any blood. They were apprehended because of their tardiness. After defeating the final ninja, Naruto turned to signal the others to stop when he heard a familiar voice scream in agony. He turned to see Tenten on her knees, a kunai to her throat, and being held at knife point. He sneered at Naruto and held her, one of the more vicious Junin. Put that damned hammer down and take that chain off or I'll slit her fucking throat, I mean it. With a nod, Naruto tossed his hammer aside. The man squinted and lowered the kunai a bit further. The chain. Throw it over here. With a frown, Naruto obeyed. The man caught the chain with his free hand and swung it over his shoulders as he unwound it and threw it at him. Now then, you don't have any weapons, you haven't shown any aptitude with jutsu, and you're all alone. What are you going to do to stop me from killing this bitch, huh? I'm going to snap your neck and then drive my chain through your heart, before crushing your head with my hammer. The man laughed loudly and threw back his head. He never saw Naruto's narrowed eyes or Tenten's smirk. And how, pray tell, do you intend to do that when you're way over the ack? The chain coiled around him, tightening his windpipe as his hands shot to his neck. While the blonde walked calmly to get his hammer and Tenten stood and walked to stand behind Naruto with the priestess. His eyes darted wildly back and forth. Before he felt a sharp twang from his chest and looked down to see the end of the chain through his sternum and waving in front of his face like a cobra. His eyes widened as Naruto stalked toward him and the chain tightened further. As Naruto was pushed onto his back and the blonde's hands, which held that enormous hammer, flew over his head and stopped in midair, the look of pure hatred on his face did nothing to improve his circumstances. That was my girlfriend you were holding hostage. I'll have you know that she means more to me than life itself, and even though she was at knife point, she was never in any danger. You signed your death certificate when you threatened her. May Cammy have mercy on your soul. Over the clearing, the sickening sound of crushed flesh and bone drowned out a gurgling scream. The man's final vision was of the blood-red ends of Uzumaki Naruto's holy hammer and the glittering diamonds around the edge. Before returning to Konoha, they had brought the priestess back to her temple after a daring morning raid on the bandits' camp. Sakura and Kakashi avoided the two lovers, which was perfectly acceptable to Naruto and Tenten. On the way back, they didn't want to endure any foolish remarks or insults. Tenten's arm was laced through Naruto's, and despite their mutual ability to understand each other's unspoken messages, they walked in silence. Baby, everything will be alright, you have my admiration. Thank you, and I know. I cherish you, I also love you. There was only unspoken body language and tender, affectionate looks. No words were exchanged, no telepathy. They did not have to talk. They had a completely different kind of connection. Naruto chose to sleep under the stars with his hammer in his hand as Tenten and he set up camp that evening. Naruto fell asleep as Tenten curled up next to him, resting her head on his shoulder. That night, he felt compelled to keep his hammer close at hand for some reason. It turned out to be a smart choice. When Naruto's eyes closed, they appeared to open instantly, and he was in a familiar place. He found the fox's shadow by looking at his feet, but it appeared to be more contained and smaller. He became aware that his soul had a few more imperfections, but they were all minor and unimportant. The golden light coming from the center of wherever he was something new. "Hello Naruto. You've returned, I see." He turned around and grinned at his goddess, the lovely one. He dropped to his knees and looked down. "Cammy. Sama. It is good to see you again. I'm hurt Naruto. You didn't mention me." Looking up, Naruto gave the man with the brown hair a playful glare. "You always seem to bring trouble behind you. I feel no need to greet you." Cammy turned back to the blonde who was now standing in front of her and laughed as her angel pouted and complained about unappreciative charges. She tilted her head and grinned at him. "So I take it that life is treating you well Naruto? You have a very pretty girlfriend." "Thank you. Tenten's one of the best things to happen to me in my life. I don't know what I'd do without her." "Oh, I think you'd manage. You just wouldn't have anyone to keep you in line." The three of them laughed at the little joke, and Naruto straightened himself and sighed as the laughter subsided. "Cammy. Sama, I'm sure you haven't called me here for idle chit-chat. What is it that you need me to do?" Cammy looked at her young warrior and smiled gently, letting out a sigh. "You've been doing well Naruto. You've been saving the weak and helpless, spreading my will as you go. What you did today with the priestess was quite exemplary and I commend you for it. However, you were quite brutal in how you dealt with those ninjas. And it shows in these new blemishes." Naruto lowered his voice and hung his head. Was I truly that wrong in dealing them their punishment? Was it so wrong to avenge the deaths and other horrors that they had brought on others? No, it was not. What was wrong was that you felt vindicated in doing this, you slightly enjoyed it. Do not let your position or power override your gentle nature Naruto. "I shall try my hardest not to." With a smile, Cammy put her fingertips beneath his chin and raised his eyes to meet hers. "Now that we have that out of the way, I wish to discuss the details of your primary mission." Naruto's lips clenched into a grimace as his eyes instantly focused. "Has the objective changed in any way?" "No, the objective is still the same. You must finish off this abomination against nature. His crimes must not go unpunished." Naruto crossed his arms and frowned. He had the impression that he was missing some details. "I know that Sasuke ties into this somehow. I just know it. Our lives seem to be tied together in some way. What I don't get is that it stands to reason that Orochimaru is the man I should be after, but my instincts tell me he is just a small fish in a big ocean. Who am I really after?" Sanosuke scowled at his youthful charge. "It isn't enough for you to know that you have a mission. You have to know all that encompasses it as well? I'm a ninja first and foremost Sanosuke. I don't like not knowing everything I can about a mission. I've had enough missions where I didn't have enough information and they almost or did turn into disasters. I just want to be prepared." Cammy reached up and touched Sanosuke's shoulder, calming him before he could say another word. "I agree Naruto. You do deserve to know everything we can tell you. Sasuke is indeed tied into all this, but only in a secondary role. Your lives are intertwined and you shall run afoul of each other, that is inevitable. But he is not your primary goal. His progenitor is your goal." "His progenitor?" "Hi, the founder of his clan." Even when confronted by a goddess, Naruto raised an eyebrow and gave his most doubtful expression. "The founder of the Uchiha clan would have to be dead. It's at least 100 years old, probably older. I never was one for histrionics." "I see that little brain boost was worthwhile. It has certainly made you a much better conversationalist. He is most certainly not dead. He's found a false method of immortality, a perverse way to keep him alive." "And Orochimaru hasn't? His way is pretty damned perverse if I remember right." "Language, young man. And yes, his way is most unnatural, but not in the way of the Uchiha. Madara has seen fit to murder his own family to ensure immortality. Those eyes of his keep him alive as long as he has the eyes of Uchiha to swap with." "Just with the eyes? That sounds implausible, but not impossible. Listen to me Naruto. The eyes hold a lot of truths. The eyes can read a person's soul. The eyes can keep immortality in your grasp. But only if you are willing to sacrifice those closest to you. And a man such as Uchiha Madara has no qualms about sacrificing his own kin to keep his wretched soul on the mortal plane. Why does he stay on the mortal plane? Why don't you simply take his life away? If it were only that simple. I made a pledge long ago, never to interfere in the lives of mortals directly. That's why I have you as my own warrior. You can change the tide of history and fix mistakes that I have made. You can set all this right. But if this man is immortal, how can I take him? How can I stand in the face of one who is immortal and expect to walk away unscathed and with him going to divine justice? Gazing intently into Naruto's eyes, Cammy lifted both of her arms and laid them on his shoulders. You can look an immortal in the eye the same way you meet my gaze. Unflinching and with total conviction. You have only to decide that you will do something, Naruto, and you will do it. That has always been your way. I know that you can do it simply because you are Uzumaki Naruto. Thank you. There is no need for thanks. You are my warrior, and sometimes even a brave warrior needs a pep talk from his general. You just needed a refresher. And on a brighter note, I believe it is time for you to go back. Your hammer is changing. Naruto gazed in wonder at his goddess. It is? What sparked the change after so long? Cammy grinned as her warrior started to wane. Love, Naruto. Love changed it. Did you not see the bright light as you came in? That was your love for Tenten. Tenten saw the hammer start to change for the second time in her life when she woke up to a bright light emanating from her boyfriend's other side. Before the gold bands faded and started to form the well-known Uzumaki swirl on the head, a glistening silver started to appear along the handle, covering the entire hammer. It shone brightly as it returned to its original shape. There was a big swirl that covered the whole hammer head. The handle was still wrapped in leather, but the thong had turned golden, which contrasted with the handle's silver hue. After a brief absence, the spike was replaced by 3 additional spikes on top and 1 on each end. It looked like a really evil instrument. After the transformation was finished, she shook Naruto awake and observed him rubbing his eyes and slapping his lips. Despite appearing more exhausted than when he had gone to sleep, he smiled and kissed her. Hey you. Is it morning already? Not quite, it's still Sakura's watch, but your hammer changed again. Oh, really? With a slight chuckle, he turned his head to the side and gazed at his new gold and silver hammer. Tenten wondered what he was going to do, so he hefted it with one hand and waved it around like a conductor's wand. He abruptly dropped it and turned back to her, kissing her forehead and closing his eyes as he drew her closer. Hey, aren't you going to, try it out? No, not at this time. I'd much rather go to sleep. You have a new hammer, though, yes, but in the morning the hammer will be present. With you, this moment won't be. Naruto put his arms around her and whispered to himself as Tenten flushed and huddled closer to him, letting out a joyful sigh. Promise me, Tenten, that we'll stay like this for eternity. Before falling asleep once more, she gave him a cheek kiss and smiled. For eternity and past eternity. As she watched the happy couple, Sakura sat on a stump a short distance away and glared at them. She had witnessed the hammer's miraculous transformation and was amazed by its size and strength, but she was also overcome with jealousy. She wondered why she didn't have that kind of love and trust in people, and she knew deep down that it was because she was obsessed with Sasuke and believed he hung the moon and could do no wrong, but she also knew that he wasn't perfect, that he was a criminal, and that she should move on. But she couldn't, and she couldn't figure out why for the life of her. She had been the focal point of Naruto's world for a long time, his only bright spot in his miserable life, even though she wouldn't have spat on him if he was on fire. Then, one day, Tenten entered his life, and he simply stopped caring about her. She had tried to win his attention again by adopting her childhood persona, but it only made him more distant. She had seen Kakashi's disinterest in Naruto grow, and she had seen the boy's anger and frustration with his team. Why couldn't things be the way they had been? She really wanted to blame Tenten, but she couldn't take full responsibility because it was partially her and Kakashi's fault as well. Maybe if she couldn't have Naruto all to herself, she could win him back as a friend. Maybe if she just apologized, even though she detested the thought of groveling to anyone, especially a boy who had once had a crush on her. Indeed, she would offer her apology and then watch how things unfolded. Tenten was leaning against a tree, enjoying the view of a shirtless Naruto complaining because he kept dragging the spikes against the ground. She was about to get up and tell him to call it a day when she caught a blob of pink out of the corner of her eye and frowned. Naruto and Tenten had decided to spend their rare day off training on his new hammer in the morning and then having fun the rest of the day. Naruto was a little irritated that he had to retrain his dance with the hammer because it had more spikes, but he was getting by. As he was putting his shirt back on, he noticed the grimace on his girlfriend's face and noticed Sakura approaching them slowly. Naruto had been dancing since he and Tenten arrived and was ready for a little fun. He had planned to take Tenten to dinner in the next town over, maybe even see a movie, or just take a nice quiet walk. Well, my positive attitude is gone. Sakura was extremely anxious. She had asked Sasuke out on many dates when she was younger and had grown accustomed to being turned down. She had become stronger as the Hokage's apprentice. She had been transferred to Team Kakashi upon Naruto's return from his training trip and had been thrilled to see him. She had been devastated to discover that he was a Jinchuriki and that it couldn't be removed without killing him. She had even promised to save Sasuke for him, though he didn't recall that. She wanted Sasuke back more than anything else, though, because she didn't want to see him killed because he had promised her something, and she expected him to keep his word. Naruto didn't seem to care anymore, so she eventually stopped caring either, and she was able to easily revert to her delusions about Sasuke because she wasn't spoiling him. Sakura had been on the verge of losing his friendship on multiple occasions, but she had never been this close before. She detested groveling and pleading, having done so far too often, but now she was prepared to do so. The only question was whether he would accept her apology. With her face lowered and her hair falling over her eyes to hide them, she stood before the two, unsure of where to start. Tenten was growing impatient with her, and Naruto appeared uninterested. Eventually, Tenten's patience gave out. "Sakura, what are you doing here? I have places to be, and Naruto does too." Sakura took a deep breath and slowly lifted her head to gaze at them. "I need to talk to Naruto." "Well, express what needs to be expressed. Tenten and I are both hungry." "I need to talk to you, in private." She couldn't be talking about anything positive, and Tenten and Naruto both scowled. "You can speak to me in front of Tenten about anything you need to. I don't keep any secrets from her." Sakura gazed at him with soulful eyes as her eyes started to well up with tears. "Please Naruto, I can't ask you this in front of her." Naruto turned back to Sakura, not at all pleased, but Tenten shrugged and sat down against the tree once more with her arms and legs crossed. "You have 5 minutes to do this. That's all, and time is running out." He complied and stood with his hands in his pockets, waiting for her to start, after she gave him a vigorous nod and gestured for him to move a little farther away, under a shade tree. Unfortunately for Sakura, Naruto wasn't joking about a time limit and was now tapping his foot in time with his heartbeat, so she wasted the first minute of her allotted time wondering how to start. "Sakura, I'm waiting." Sakura did the only thing she could think of and decided to dive in headfirst. "Naruto, I'm sorry, what should I do? I apologize. I apologize for my actions, for the way that Kakashi Sensei and I have been communicating with you, and for taking your friendship for granted. Will you pardon me?" Naruto gave her a wary look. "How do you want to benefit from this, Sakura?" Her jaw dropped open in disbelief, and she became furious at the thought. How dare he suggest that she had another reason for doing this? "Well, I just wanted to say I'm sorry, Naruto. All I wanted was for everything to be as it was when you returned from your training trip. I want our relationship to be harmonious." With a sigh, he turned his gaze from her to Tenten's seat. "I doubt that things will ever return to how they were prior to Sakura. You seem to have gradually returned to your fangirl phase, while I've grown up. It's not something that can be resolved quickly or with a straightforward apology." She spoke quietly, turning her gaze back to the floor. "What then must I do to demonstrate my sincerity? Admit that pursuing Sasuke isn't your main concern. Acknowledge that he is not the end all, be all of men. Find something achievable instead of chasing a shadow. After completing these tasks, we will discuss forgiveness. The time is up." Sakura, who had a lot on her mind, nodded her head slowly and started walking back to her apartment. Watching Sakura disappear into the distance, Tenten stood and slithered slowly to the blonde, who rested her chin on his shoulder and wrapped her arms softly around his waist from behind. "What's wrong, sweetie?" He put his hands over hers and returned her smile. "Everything is fine." Sakura made an effort to apologize, but I told her what she had to do before I would accept it. "Are you willing to pardon her?" "Yes, I would if she truly apologized, but only if she satisfies my requirements and I have faith in her." Tenten scrunched her nose, rested her chin back on his shoulder, and sighed, burying her face in his back and breathing in his scent. "Naruto, you stink and are more forgiving than I am. After working out with Guy Sensei, I won't go out with you smelling like Lee's jockstrap." With a mischievous expression in his eyes, Naruto turned around and faced Tenten, his arms encircling her to prevent her from escaping, and he whispered softly, putting his mouth near her ear. "And Chan, how would you know that Lee's jockstrap smells?" She summoned her righteous anger and pushed as far away from him as she could, but Tenten turned bright red and made an unsuccessful attempt to wriggle out of his arms. "You're well aware that I have no idea what that thing smells like. Let me go now." Smirking, Naruto drew her nearer. "No, let me go, Naruto." "Nah. All right. Me, proceed, or what?" All, Tenten held onto his shoulders to keep her from collapsing, but Naruto grabbed her by the lips before she could move, leaving her head spinning from the intensity of the kiss. He noticed the stunned expression in her eyes as he withdrew. Wow. Whoa? Tenten crossed her arms and turned away, glaring at him and shrugging her shoulders. Dude. That's something you always use against me. It works. It's not my fault. Furthermore, you take pleasure in it just as much as I do, if not more. Stop talking and let's head home. Before we go to eat, you must clean up. So do you, jockstrap girl. As Tenten suddenly produced a staff and started swinging at him while yelling at the top of her lungs, Naruto ran ahead of him, laughing. Naruto, I'll kill you, as if he had never heard such a threat. After she calmed down and made him carry her back, they eventually arrived at her apartment, where Naruto entered her room and threw her on the bed without any fanfare. I'll shower first because Her Majesty insists that I stink, don't peek. Tenten half-heartedly glared up at him from her pillow, finding it difficult to be angry with the ninja who were always cheerful. Whereas, ladies first, now. With a shrug, Naruto removed his shirt. I never subscribed to that philosophy, especially when those ladies can kick my ass. Tenten gave a cheeky smile. You're implying that I'm superior to you? Naruto responded with a shout from the restroom. You can kick my ass, but only because I love you, I'm saying. I would kick your ass, so you'd better be happy you're taking a shower. She growled and started to spread her clothes when she didn't hear back, knowing that they would be moving quickly, but really just wanting to be comfortable while he carried her. She grinned when Naruto came out of her bathroom wearing only a towel, and it was difficult not to jump him at him. Are you done yet? Yes, I'm finished. Are there any clothes left here for me? The upper left drawer contains them. For you, I washed them. Chan, thank you. You had better wash up quickly. We must start now. As he dressed, Naruto whistled to himself, forgetting that he had this specific outfit. Tenten's dresser was carefully folded with a white muscle shirt, khaki pants, and a denim jacket. He sighed and shrugged on the jacket, which he had to buy after he was unable to wrest his leather jacket from his girl, despite his best efforts to retrieve it. Even though they had been dating for a few months and neither of them was modest around the other, they hadn't quite taken their relationship to that level yet. They both wanted to, but neither was willing to be the one to offer first. After all, they wanted their first encounters to be memorable, so Naruto knew better than to be in the room when Tenten was getting dressed. Tenten had come over to his apartment and completely renovated it, and he now had a half-closet full of women's clothes and a variety of weapons on all his walls. He flopped down on the couch and looked around, laughing that her apartment had become a second home to him and her. When he remembered what he'd done with that clothing, he laughed until he almost passed out. When Tenten heard Naruto come down the hall, she dropped the magazine she was reading on the couch in Naruto's living room and waited for him to get ready so they could go eat. One of his new hobbies was to mess with Tenten, and he smirked when he saw her face and struck a provocative pose, knowing that this would cause her to react. Since he was a little larger in the chest than her, a full-length shirt now exposed some midriff, but he had made the decision to use his Oroku no Jutsu and put on some of her clothes because he liked the outfit she had worn on one of their first dates. Her response caught him off guard. When they both came up for air, Tenten smiled at him and placed her hand on his stomach while leaning over toward his ear, giving it a light nip and whispering to him. Tenten jumped out of her seat and strode forward as if she had a purpose. She pulled him by the ponytails and kissed him for almost a full minute. You look hot in that, but so help me, if you stretched out one of my favorite shirts. He'd never thought she had it in her, but he quickly pulled out of that shirt, and Tenten fainted from her perverted thoughts, leaving that thread open. He grunted loudly and put his arms around her waist, but he was too shaken by the memories to notice her slip behind him and jump over the back of the couch to land in his lap. What were you contemplating? That time I put on your clothes and used my Oroku no Jutsu to get a reaction out of you. She buried her face in his shoulder as her cheeks turned scarlet. Yes, I do recall that. You looked very attractive. Pervert. The people around me are perverts. Hypocrite. I agree. When Naruto heard the familiar voice, he moaned and didn't even open his eyes. Sanosuke, leave. Don't ruin my day. I was enjoying myself, please. I just have some news to tell you. Okay, thanks. Sour the atmosphere. My ideal day is gone. Sanosuke frowned at his charge and gave him a slap on the back of the head. What on earth was that used for? Are you giving me more intelligence? No, I'm going to slap you for being so smart. Now listen carefully. He leaned back in his seat and sighed as Naruto tightened his grip on Tenten and she put her arms around his neck. Okay, go ahead. Sanosuke let out a moan and wiped his face. You are such a whiny kid. Listen, you will soon receive your last gift, but it won't materialize until you are under a lot of emotional strain. What is it? Where is the enjoyment in telling now? Have I not previously informed you that I will not give you advance notice? But before the gift can be used, there will be one last modification. And it is? Come on, man. 10. Shan gets grumpy when she's hungry, and I'm hungry too. Whipped. Oh, your eyes. I apologize. You fool, your eyes. The transformation of your eyes will soon be finished. You still have as of yet to tell me exactly why my eyes are turning silver. Sanosuke rubbed the bridge of his nose and let out what felt like his millionth sigh. Do you not listen at all? Do you recall the last time Cammy herself said that the soul's portals are the eyes? That they are capable of holding power? Yeah. Yours don't hold any authority, but they do show where you stand in relation to your gifts. Additionally, if you give them a little chakra, they become a very powerful intimidator. Really? You've never given it a try? Tenten leaned back to get a better look, gasping when the silver in his eyes glowed, and reached a tentative hand up to his cheek to turn his face so she could see better. Naruto shook his head and started to push chakra to his eyes. So pretty, Sanosuke folded his arms and scoffed. It's only the crazy, loving girlfriend who finds glowing eyes attractive. Hold off until you see his final present. Kawaii will likely make you squeal like a fangirl. Without turning around, she responded by throwing a kunai through his chest while maintaining eye contact with Naruto. Sanosuke grunted and drew the weapon, letting it fall to the ground. You know, you two are the ruination of more sets of my clothing. Angel, are you finished here? At some point, Naruto and I would like to go out to dinner. All right, act that way. Eat now. Do as you please. Inconsiderate little jerks. She awwwed and started to pout as Naruto got up, picked Tenten up in his arms, and removed the chakra from his eyes as the angel vanished. Tenten isn't acting that way anymore. You look like a little girl because of it. Your jacket is missing. Later on, it will get cold. She squirmed from his embrace and returned a moment later, fastening the jacket that was too big on her. Now get ready. Where are we heading? That new place in the next town over was on my mind. They should have a great chef and a decent assortment. After she locked her door and waited, Naruto gathered her back in his arms and rebalanced her weight. I'm still going to get that jacket back one day. Not likely. Naturally, some still saw this as an opportunity to trip up the demon brat, but the majority of Konoha's population quickly moved out of the way when they saw the yellow blur coming their way. Naruto and Tenten blowing through the streets on their way to one of their weekly outings had become a familiar sight, and most had learned to move out of the way when they heard him coming. A particularly resentful old woman was sweeping her porch when she noticed them approaching, and she swung herself around to take a swipe at his feet with the broom, growling as he leapt over her. Her frown soon turned to a smile when she noticed that one of her cronies had set up his fruit wagon so that Naruto would land on it. Naruto and Tenten had grown accustomed to the idiots who attempted to harm them and knew when to leap or duck. Tenten squealed loudly as he landed, almost strangling him with the iron grip on his neck, but Naruto thought quickly and let his chain unravel to wrap around an electrical pole, swinging him and his girl out of danger. After he'd pried her loose, he turned to face the elderly woman, and both teenagers glared at the elderly people. What the devil is wrong with you, lady? You shouldn't have tried to trip me because I didn't do anything wrong. What a brat you are. Do you really think you can speak to me in that manner? Yes, I do. You deliberately tried to trip me. What if Shan had been hurt when I fell? That whore deserves to be hurt if she's fallen under your spell. Tenten pinched Naruto's arm as he started to approach her, and she shook her head as he looked down at her in shock. You know you can't, Naruto. More problems will only result from it. But she called you a whore, Shan. I'm unable to let that go. I am aware that she called me Naruto, but I am also aware that it is untrue. Both you and I are aware of it. Alright, let's go eat. With a furious sigh, he turned around again, but he wasn't going anywhere without the last say. She is a very kind lady, so you're lucky. For disparaging someone I regard as an angel, I would prefer that you simply break your hip. For her own good, Tenten is far too kind. Their cheerful mood had been somewhat dampened, and she hoped that by the time they reached the restaurant, he would have calmed down a bit. She hated that every time they just went out, they got hassled in Konoha. Outside the village, it was a paradise for them, and they could walk around like a couple without fear of persecution. Naruto ran onward toward the neighboring town in silence while holding Tenten. She occasionally questioned whether it would not be worthwhile to relocate to a different village, or at the very least, to a nearby town. He stopped just outside the town and sat her down, interrupting her thoughts, and she placed her arm around his waist while his rested on her shoulders. So, should we start with dinner or a movie? I believe that in order to stress, we ought to watch the film first. After that brief incident, I'm not particularly hungry. Tenten nodded her head, and they went to the theater to pick out their movie. They always seemed to watch Princess Yuki movies, for some reason, and they never really watched the movies themselves, instead enjoying the intimacy and anonymity that the theater offered them. It was one of the few public spaces where they could be themselves around other people. Tenten sighed contentedly as she leaned into him and fell asleep, knowing that he would wake her up when the show was over. Times like these were fortunate for Naruto. He and Tenten were alone in their own little world, unhindered by irate villagers, tense situations involving his team, or potentially fatal jutsus. When she stretched and yawned, Naruto laughed and gently shook her awake. "All right, let's have some food. I believe you've gotten enough rest." "Did the film do well?" They're all the same." Tenten suddenly produced 2 kunai, as is her custom, and they stood back. Back. Naruto gritted his teeth and moved his hand towards his tattoo as 4 ninjas jumped out of the shadows and surrounded them. The group leader then spoke up. "My lord has ordered you to accompany us, Uzumaki Naruto. We'll kill the girl if she doesn't resist." With a sigh, Naruto withdrew his hand from his tattoo, assuming that Orochimaru had sent them based on their headbands. "Orochimaru has a dossier on me, right?" The ninjas nodded, looking perplexed. "And before you came here, you were all briefed, right?" More nods. "Then why do you assume that I'm just going to accompany you based on Cammy's name? I will fight to get where I'm going." The villagers had all moved to safer ground and were well versed in ninja combat, so the leader shook his head and took a stance. Naruto charged with a Rasengan in his hand and whispered to Tenten. "Avoid getting hurt, okay? You either." Both of them jumped into battle, and Naruto turned to the taller ninja and smiled before thrusting the Rasengan forward and striking the shorter ninja he was fighting in the gut, instantly eliminating him from the fight. "Now, big boy, it's just you and me. You have no idea how much this is relieving my stress." Tenten was having a whole lot of fun right now, and she needed this. She didn't have any of her large weapons with her, but she wasn't powerless because she had an almost infinite supply of senbon needles and kunai at her disposal. This second ninja had better be a better fighter, or at least a better dodger. She put some senbon between her fingers and let them fly. She smiled when she saw him dodge. At least he had talent in that. One ninja had already been taken out with a kunai to the throat, and she was very disappointed with him. She had expected it to be a shadow clone or a genjutsu, but it had been the real deal. Naruto had not yet used either of his toys because he wanted to try to keep his other abilities fresh and sharpened, but he had been relying on his hammer and chain too much, and he had been struggling against his opponent more than he had anticipated. The first ninja had been weak, but his new opponent was no slouch. Whatever happened to the notorious god of the hammer, Uzumaki? Come on. I keep hearing about this enormous piece of steel. Where is it? Where's your chain? My real enemy is where? Naruto blocked a kick to his side, scowled, and ducked another blow. Today, I wished to fight without those. You know I have other abilities. After giggling at him, the auto ninja started to make hand gestures. Don't make fun of me, boy. Those are the only skills you possess. My lord must be crazy to believe that you can help him become powerful. With a growl, Naruto reached for his tattoo. All right. So be it, since this is what you desire. Let your own head do it. He pushed chakra into his eyes, recalling what Soka had said earlier, and watched with satisfaction as the auto ninja backed up a step and gasped. The files did not contain a dojutsu. What on earth is that? A genjutsu? Kai. Naruto just stood there, waiting for the ninja to put an end to his pointless attempts to stop an imaginary genjutsu. What is the function of that dojutsu? With a smile, Naruto withdrew his hammer from the seal. Are you not interested in knowing? Tenten, who had not yet worked out her aggression, decided that they should bring back at least one enemy for questioning, and as her opponent fell to the ground with a senbon piercing her neck, she crossed her arms and huffed angrily, a gesture that Ibiki would appreciate. When she turned to watch Naruto's battle, she noticed that he had been given the more difficult opponent. It was becoming a little annoying that he always received the challenges during battles. Though he wasn't quite as skilled with this new hammer as he was with his old one, Naruto was having a great time. The auto ninja was backing up quickly and was clearly afraid of the power he possessed in the hammer. Naruto decided he had had enough fun with his opponent and returned the hammer to the seal, but the ninja paused and gave him a suspicious look. Uzumaki, what are you planning? I'm bored. I've had enough of this game. It's time for us to travel to Konoha together. How do you intend to achieve that? Like this. Naruto sighed and heaved the man to his shoulder, knocking him unconscious before he could move. His chain slid back around his waist, and as he turned, He saw that Tenten had her own bundle. So, would you rather just go back or get something to eat? Naruto, are you serious? I'm going hungry. Let's just get some food and send these two back to Ibiki and Anko for interrogation. Alright. However, we're so dirty now that I doubt we'll be able to enter a decent restaurant. It's okay. I wasn't in the mood for a fancy place anyhow. Now take action regarding this garbage. Right away, my queen. Shut up. Aren't we grumpy when we're hungry? Without waiting for her response, Naruto called forth an extra large toad, which landed on a house and raised its foot. That was painful. Was it Jiraiya or Naruto who called me to this rat hole? That'd be me, Naruto. Boy, what do you need? Ibiki in Konoha needs these 4 delivered by you. Could you help me with that? Hey, I can. When you call me again, I want to be paid 10 bottles of sake. Excellent. I'll get you paid shortly. Do it, please. The toad winced as he slurped the 4 into his mouth. Their teat is live. After putting an arm around Tenten's shoulders and howling with laughter, Naruto called out to the toad as they left. The taste is so good that I'll add 2 more bottles. For a short time, the toad believed he could tolerate the taste. After arriving home late, Naruto and Tenten collapsed onto the couch, deciding that although a shower sounded nice, the couch was too comfortable. She fell asleep on top of him, and he stroked her hair, causing her to purr in her sleep, which caused him to roll his eyes and feel a wet spot form on his chest. In the morning, he would complain about the drool. In a dimly lit hallway, a solitary figure knelt in front of a chair, bowed its head, and spoke softly. The attempt to apprehend Naruto Uzumaki failed. Instead, our ninja were taken prisoner and are currently in Konoha's custody. Leaning back, the figure in the chair steepled its fingers and laughed. It makes no difference. I only provided enough information to the group's Junin to inform Uzumaki that I was pursuing him. Call it a warning shot. What else is there? Yes. Uzumaki seems to have discovered a dujutsu. During the battle, his eyes glowed strangely and turned silver. But I don't know what it does. Because I was so far away from the fight, I didn't hear what he said. The poor ninja who was reporting clutched at his throat and fell over dead, a poison senbon stuck in his trachea, while the figure in the chair nodded and waved its hand dismissively. The figure in the chair sat forward, its arms resting on its knees, its red eyes appearing to glow in the light of the single torch. Soon Uzumaki, soon. 2 figures, one standing and the other sitting on a stone, gazed at one another across the darkness. The voice intonated like a man's, and the one sitting on the stone looked up with one red eye visible. You will go and intercept Uzumaki. The auto ninja that you placed that genjutsu on were worthless pawns, hardly able to ascertain his true power. I want an honest assessment. The voice was even and gentle, and the figure in front of him kept its eyes closed. You want me to intercept him? This is a foolish endeavor. He has grown very powerful in recent times. The red-eyed figure stood up, squinting his eyes. You will do as you are told. I want an accurate assessment of his skills, to know if he is as powerful as he is made out to be. Kidnap his woman, threaten to kill her. I want him angered. I want him lost in misery. I want to know if he is the one who can challenge me. With a hint of anger in its voice, the figure narrowed its own eyes and opened them to reveal the Sharingan's swirling tomo. This is still foolish and unneeded. There are better ways of ascertaining his skill and power. And all of them take too long. I grow bored as the years march on. Now do as you are told and take Kisame with you. Do not fail me, Itachi. Leaving Kisame outside the walls of Konoha, Itachi scowled. This new Naruto was not to be taken lightly any longer. He smacked a failure. Tenten was still sleeping on top of Naruto when he opened his eyes in response to a pressure on his chest. In an attempt to pry her away from him without waking her, he rolled his neck. Don, move. Comfortable. Well, that idea was a bust. With a sigh, Naruto reclined once more. However, he needed to move because he was beginning to cramp. He put his arms around Tenten's back, created his well-known seal, and a cage bunshin materialized. The clone smiled as he glanced down at his situation. What's the matter? Not comfy? Naruto pointed to the girl standing on top of him while glaring at his doppelganger. Just switch with me so I can shower, smartass. Naruto now stood next to the couch, cracking his back as the clone created the hand seal for Kawarimi. A snorting Tenten nestled closer to its chest as the clone grunted and attempted to adjust her weight. What the hell have you been feeding this chick? She weighs a freaking ton. Really? I never noticed. Anyway, have fun, and if she wakes up, stall her. The clone placed its hands behind its head and nodded. Enjoy the downtime, if you can. The majority of the time, Clones were only used for combat, but Naruto deliberately used them for pointless purposes. I guess it's part of his charm. Tenten woke up from her sleep and groaned into her boyfriend's chest. She'd had a great time the night before and hadn't slept that well in a long time. She and Naruto needed a good fight to release the tension and stress. Unfortunately, their opponents had been such wimps that the fight was hardly worth it. When she attempted to press her nose deeper into its shirt, the clone beneath her started to writhe and giggle, and Tenten snarled at the unwelcome movement and noise. "Quit it. I'm trying to sleep, then stop tickling me, Toots." "Toots?" She blinked slowly as she gazed up at the clone with bleary eyes. "Naruto, did you just call me Toots?" "Sure did, babe." Tenten scowled and gave him a disbelieving look before slapping him on the head and killing the clone. Unceremoniously, she fell onto the couch and instantly jumped up. She needed to kill her boyfriend, but would he leave her alone with a clone? The memories of his clone began to creep into Naruto's mind, and he grimaced. If there was one thing Tenten detested about Naruto, it was calling her names that were sexist. If only he could pinpoint the area of his brain that caused his clones to act rudely and rebel. The sound of the bathroom door flinging open against the wall and the familiar stomps of her entering the bedroom interrupted his thoughts. She refused to. The shower curtain was thrown back, revealing Tenten's irate face, and his eyes glowed. "Naruto. What the hell is the idea? Leaving me with a clone and not telling me?" When her mind finally caught up to the scene before her, her anger faded and her voice trailed off. Her gaze moved from Naruto's head, where his hands were motionless as he washed his hair, to his chest, where she had spent a joyful evening, to his flawless abs, which she enjoyed massaging, and finally to his. When Tenten's eyes moved farther south to the one area of his body she had yet to touch, her mind almost died. Even though she really wanted to, she hadn't seen it in all the months they had been dating, but now it was right in front of her. Despite his embarrassing circumstances, Naruto was ashamed that his dick was unable to get along with the rest of his body. All he could do was hope that he would later be able to restore his dignity. Tenten was fixated on her boyfriend's excessively large object. She had spent enough time with the older kunoichis and attended enough sleepovers with girls her own age to have a deep understanding of the anatomy of men. Tenten was certain that she wouldn't be shocked when she was ready for sex because Anko's descriptions of it were so detailed. That stupid theory was completely disproved by Naruto. She was still going to try, but the thing between his legs would never, ever fit between her legs. The curtain swishing shut and a confused voice shouting at her snapped her out of her piercing gaze. "Tenten. What the hell?" She saw that the face peeking out from behind the curtain was redder than usual, and he had a confused and angry expression. "Why the hell did you kick the door in?" About crotch level, Tenten tilted her head and gestured toward the curtain. "I've got a better question. How the hell have you been hiding that all this time?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes you do. That freaking log in your pants. Did you use Kawarimi with your dick?" It appeared as though the heat emanating from Naruto's head was frying his brain, making him even more red. "Get the hell out of here." Still remembering her man's enormous dong, Tenten made a quick retreat. She felt the chop to her neck, but she never felt the presence behind her. Still a little irritated, but calmer than before, Naruto came out of the shower. Even if it was her right to perceive him in that way through a proxy, he reasoned that rudeness was still unacceptable because she had only been upset with his clone and hadn't been thinking. He called out for her while he was drying his hair. "Tenten. I'm sorry I snapped at you." His response was silence. After putting on his trousers, Naruto left the room. Tenten. He assumed she had gone, so he shrugged, but when he entered the living room, he noticed it in utter chaos. The walls were broken, the couch was overturned, and her belongings were all over the place. It was impossible, he told himself, that he could not have possibly missed this. After searching through the debris, he eventually turned to look at the wall. A message from a man he had hoped to never hear from again was written in what he hoped was red marker. Naruto.kun. Though necessity forces us to meet once more on unpleasant terms, I had hoped for a more cordial meeting. As a guarantee that you will see me, I have taken the girl you are interested in. She won't be hurt as long as you show up, so don't worry. She doesn't pique my interest. However, Kisame believes that Samahata would enjoy her flesh the most, so move quickly. Come see me at the deserted temple in Rice Country. Which one do you know? Itachi. With a single blow, Naruto tore down the wall, tears running down his cheeks. He was aware that his involvement with him was a mistake, and Tenten might now suffer the consequences. With his eyes promising blood, he leapt out of the hole he had made as his chain wound around his arms. He needed to kill a weasel. Tsunade was about to investigate it herself after feeling the surge in power when Naruto punched through the wall when he showed up at her window with tears in his eyes. He stepped just inside her office and slammed the glass back. They took her. Tsunade made an unsuccessful attempt to soothe him. Naruto, calm down. Who took who? Itachi and Kisame. They took Tenten. Why? Naruto let out a frustrated growl. To get to me, why else? Naruto, think clearly. This could be a trap, there's no time. They have Tenten and Kisame will kill her if I don't come. I'm going now. Wait. At least take back up. Naruto leapt onto the railing and turned slightly to face her. Send whoever you can and tell them to come as fast as they can. I've been told to meet them in Rice Country at the abandoned temple. Naruto, wait. He leapt off and ran over the rooftops, but it was too late. Frustrated, Tsunade snarled and dialed her secretary. Get me Sakura and Kakashi. Tell him if he's 1 second late, I'll kill him. Anything that stood in Naruto's way was completely destroyed as he ran in rage. To clear his path of trees and stones, he swung his hammer. It would be easy for the ninja who were pursuing him to figure out his destination. His mind returned to his relationship with Tenten as he ran. He recalled their first kiss, their first embrace, their first hookup, and the first time she declared her love for him. He became more irate and pushed more chakra into his eyes the more he thought about her. If someone had been strolling through that forest, they would have believed that an angel or devil with silver eyes had appeared out of the shadows. His eyes were brighter now, and his teeth were exposed. His fangs were so long that they extended past his lower lip. Now that he was shirtless, the seal on his stomach was clearly visible, and his hands had become claws. However, the Kyuubi's evil red chakra was absent. Naruto flew over the valley of the end and past Kimamaro's boneyard. Ordinarily, he would have gone to show reverence, but Tenten's life was more significant. Given the distance, he had arrived at the temple in just under an hour, which was quite an accomplishment. His bare feet scuffing the grass, he paused just outside the temple steps. Itachi, Sakura and Kakashi were quite uneasy because Tsunade was standing when she explained the mission parameters. While giving missions, the Hokage never stood. They thought this was crucial. Tsunade inhaled deeply before glaring at them both. Tenten has been captured by the Akatsuki. Naruto has pursued them. He left nearly 10 minutes ago for the abandoned temple in Rice Country. I want you two to follow him and help him. He was very distraught when he came here to tell me. Kakashi maintained his expressionless stare. Tenten is a fellow leaf ninja. We won't abandon her. Yes, Tsunade. Shisho, we'll save her. Fine, but before you go, there is one more provision. I'm going with you and we'll be traveling very quickly. I sent a messenger slug to Guy and he'll round up Neji and Lee to assist if possible. Now let's go. The trio vanished in a flash. We're right here, Naruto-kun. There is no reason to shout. Naruto cast a hateful glance at Kisami's insane smile and Itachi's unwavering composure. When Kisame saw the expression in Naruto's eyes and the silvery glow that overshadowed the blue, his smile vanished and was replaced by a grimace. The only indication that Itachi was taken aback was a raised eyebrow. What has happened to your eyes, Naruto-kun? Why do they glow in such a manner? With a growl, Naruto kept his hammer at his side, prepared to jump at any second. They are none of your concern. Where is Tenten? The bun-haired girl? She is currently resting within the temple. She is not your concern at the moment. Let me see that she is all right. Kisame moved forward after laughing. Not a chance, brat. I'd rather see you sweat it out. Not wanting things to get out of hand, Itachi extended his hand to Kisame. Stay out of this. You are merely here to observe. Kisame scowled at Itachi while clenching his teeth. What about our mission to capture the brat? That is not important right now. With extreme caution, Itachi started to walk up and down the stairs, taking slow, deliberate steps while maintaining eye contact with Naruto. When he got to the bottom step, he let his Sharingan burn. Let us begin, Naruto-kun. I would like to see exactly how far you've come. With all of his strength, Naruto roared and charged forward, demanding that his adversaries perish. Sakura, Kakashi, and Tsunade were only a few minutes away from the temple, and Tsunade was at her most tense. She prayed for her fellow blonde as they trailed behind Kakashi's faithful pug. Naruto, stay safe. Avoid making any foolish decisions. Watching Naruto charge, Itachi was unimpressed and quickly jumped away. When Naruto destroyed the temple's steps and reduced them to a pile of debris, his eyes widened by a mere inch. Naruto took his hammer from the remnants of the marble after the Uchiha fell a few feet away. Hold still, Itachi, and I'll show you the true meaning of power. Itachi tilted his head sideways, intrigued. And what might that meaning be? Naruto.kun. To protect those you love, that is the meaning of power. Without a purpose, power is meaningless. Your quest for power has been meaningless. Like he was reprimanding a young child, Itachi shook his head. No, Naruto.kun. My quest has not been meaningless. My quest has never been for power. My quest has been to find someone able to push me beyond my limits, to find someone who can kill me. And I have, as of yet, to find that man. You, however, have potential. Now show me. Itachi lunged forward, slicing at Naruto with his kunai, but was stopped by the hammer and had to back off. Why do you still hold back, Naruto.kun? Why do you suppress your power? Shut up. I'm not suppressing anything. If you even touch one hair on her head, I'll kill you. After putting his hammer away, Naruto formed a makeshift pair of brass knuckles by clenching the chain ends in his fists. He charged at Itachi, but the Uchiha just glided out of his way as the Sharingan anticipated his next move. Itachi sighing and shaking his head, he jumped back. Such a waste of potential. I've heard of your fight with my foolish brother at the Valley of the End. I've heard from Zetsu of how you were able to move with speeds beyond the Sharingan. Where is that power? Naruto kicked him in the head and attempted to strike him with the chain, but Itachi consistently avoided him and never once struck back. It reminded them of the time they had saved Gaara. The man remained inviolable. I'll never use that bastard's power ever again. Now give Tenten back to me. Itachi's voice came out in a harsh whisper, and his eyes narrowed dangerously. Is that what it's going to take for your power to come forth? Your true power? Am I going to have to harm the girl Naruto-kun? Fearfully, Naruto froze and launched a more intense attack on Itachi. No. You leave her alone. She has nothing to do with this. Leave her alone, Itachi. Trying desperately to get the Uchiha's attention back to him, Naruto swung wildly as he ran directly for him. Naruto flipped and caught himself, launching himself back towards the older man, but Itachi grabbed his arm and threw him against a tree. After giving Naruto a backhand and sending him flying, Itachi dashed into the temple and reappeared with a shaky Tenten at his side, bound at the wrists and ankles. She didn't make a sound, but her eyes were wet. When he placed a kunai to her throat, her eyes widened, and she shot Naruto a beseeching glance. Release your power now, Naruto.kun, or the girl dies. I'm through playing games. I want to see the true power of what your love can do. Unable to move, Naruto stood. He had no idea how to let go of his power. Invariably, it occurred spontaneously. Itachi lifted the kunai high into the air, taking his hesitation as a no. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the other three reach the edge of the clearing and congratulated them on their good timing. Naruto would only suffer more as a result. If you won't do it voluntarily, then we'll do this by force. Enjoy as her blood sprays across the ground. Naruto's mind went into overdrive as he watched in horror as the blade started to descend directly toward Tenten's creamy throat. Everything slowed to a crawl as his body advanced as though on autopilot. Tenten closed her eyes and waited for the death stroke as she watched him approach closer and closer. She wished she had spent more time with him. Earlier that morning, she was never kissed. They had engaged in combat prior to her capture, and she never expressed regret. She would never be able to spend eternity with him. All Naruto could think about was Tenten's throat and that blade. I need to move more quickly. I need to save her. I need to fly. I need to fly. I must fly. As the blade started to descend and Naruto took off like a bat out of hell, Sakura let out a scream. She hoped he would, even though she knew he would never make it. Tenten deserved better than to pass away in this manner. She was worthy of Naruto. When Kakashi saw another comrade killed before their time, he watched in complete horror. If only he had been quicker, if only he had been a better ninja, teacher, and friend, but there are always ifs in life, and this was a given. Tenten was on the verge of death. As Naruto rushed toward his girlfriend in a desperate attempt to save her, Tsunade watched. She turned away as she saw the blade descend, not wanting to witness the premature death of another young ninja. She briefly focused on Naruto as a result of her head turning, and when she witnessed the most incredible event, her mouth fell open. For a brief moment, the world appeared to slow down, and she noticed that Naruto was slightly evolving. White appeared to be streaming from his back, and his eyes were glowing brighter. Abruptly, he vanished. The world was a blur to Naruto, and he was unaware of what was happening. He felt as though he was standing motionless as everything became more apparent, despite the fact that he was moving at tremendous speeds and the ground was sweeping beneath him. Now that he knew he could make it, the knife appeared to be creeping toward Tenten. He needed to make it. He would succeed. Tenten found herself in a cozy, comfortable embrace that she had learned to identify as that of the man she loved and wished to live out her days with. However, Itachi had cut her throat, leaving her dead and forced to wait for Naruto in the afterlife. But since opening her eyes would indicate that Naruto was no longer there, she was reluctant to do so. Dumb Tenten tried to be reasonable and slowed her breathing a little. The body that was holding her should not have a heartbeat if she was actually dead. Heartbeats were unnecessary for the dead. Dumb. When she opened her eyes, she saw a breathtaking scene and decided to jump in and finish it. Despite the fact that she was still bound, she felt secure knowing that she was in someone's arms. With his kunai still in his hand, now limply at his side, Itachi stood across the clearing. The man appeared unsure of what had happened, if the girl was right. Tenten was, too. The kunai descending and Naruto's yelling were the last things she recalled, followed by nothing. She had shown up in another man's arms. Tenten ripped her gaze from her captor and gazed up at her enigmatic benefactor, gasping when she recognized Naruto as a completely new entity. Pools of silver that glowed even in the face of the sun replaced her beloved's amiable blues. With her hands bound, she reached up and caressed his cheeks, admiring his long fangs, and when he gave her a firm squeeze, tears streamed down her cheeks. Naruto had saved her, and she was still alive. When she heard Itachi speak again, she stiffened. "Kisame, let's go. We're at a disadvantage here. We'll meet again, Naruto-kun. Hone your skills and next time we meet, I wish to fight against this power you have exhibited today." Moving at a speed that not even Sharingan can detect is a feat indeed. 3 astonished newcomers and a panicked Naruto were left behind when the 2 Akatsuki members ran away, but Tenten was starting to worry because he hadn't stopped looking behind him. When he heard Tenten whisper, he realized the other 3 were approaching. "My angel, my guardian angel." Naruto was perplexed until he turned to look behind him and was astounded by what he saw. 2 enormous, white, feathery wings spread out behind him. He turned to Tenten, who embraced him and sobbed into his exposed chest. He folded his wings in a tender embrace without thinking. Tenten whispered repeatedly, "My guardian angel, my beautiful angel." Miles away from the temple, Itachi finally stopped, and Kisame landed next to him. The shark man tightened his hold on the hilt of his sword and glanced at his trembling companion. "So what the hell was that? I've never seen a jutsu like that before." "I don't believe that was a jutsu. I don't know what that was." "A Keke Genkai perhaps?" "No, that was beyond a Keke Genkai. That was supernatural. Come, we must report back in." Kisame scowled and silently followed his companion. Being in the dark about something bothered him. And he had only been in the dark up to this point. There was a lot of noise, discomfort, and annoyance during the journey back to Konoha. The kind of silence whose ever-present weight can suffocate a person to death. Nobody was enjoying themselves. Sakura kept glancing between Naruto's recently acquired wings, which occasionally fluttered, and the sleeping Tenten he was holding in his arms. She wanted to see if they were as fluffy as they appeared because she was a girl. To find out how they operated, the medical team wanted to examine them. Kakashi was glaring at his blonde pupil while attempting to maintain his composed exterior. When Naruto had claimed to be Cammy's warrior, he had never been believed. He had, in fact, essentially laughed behind the boy's back. However, angel wings don't appear out of thin air. For that, there is no Kekai Genkai. Instead, he had resorted to laughing while reading his pornography book. In addition to being there for the debriefing, trying to solve the mystery was a hassle. At last, Tsunade's curiosity overcame her, and she stopped to take another look at Tenten. By this point, they were only a 2-hour walk from Konoha, and she was eager to examine the 2 teenagers. She noticed that Tenten's wings were slightly spread out to adapt to the ground as Naruto sat down with him in his lap. She was fascinated by those new appendages. Tenten was in Naruto's lap as he sat cross-legged on the ground and gently shook her awake. When the girl with the bunny eyes saw his face, her eyes opened and she grinned. "Hey you. Hey. How long was I out?" "A little over an hour and a half. Tsunade wants to check and make sure you're okay." Tenten glanced at the wings once more after nodding. She jumped up and gasped, ran her hands down the length of them, and gave them a gentle touch. "They're real. I thought I imagined them." When she caressed the feathers, Naruto moaned and laughed. "Nope, they're real all right. They're so soft and fluffy." "I am not soft and fluffy." She rubbed her cheek against his back, close to where the wings joined, and smiled at him, allowing them to caress her. "No, but these are." The 2 were brought back to reality by a loud clearing of the throat, and they turned to see Sakura and Kakashi watching in amusement as Tsunade crossed her arms beneath her large chest. While Naruto moaned something incomprehensible, Tenten flushed and hid behind one of the wings. Being perceived as a soft kunoichi bothered her. Now that the two lovebirds are still, we can examine you and make sure you're alright. Sakura, 10 to 10-10. Despite huffing at this, both girls reluctantly did as she said. Sakura used a diagnostic jutsu to run her hands over Tenten's body while she sat motionless. The same thing was being done to Naruto by Tsunade, but they were also speaking quietly. What is with your eyes and these wings? Your eyes haven't changed back yet. I don't know. It just happened. They won't go away. Usually Sanosuke shows up to explain what happened and tell me what to do, but he hasn't yet. He's probably waiting to get you alone. Now, tell me what happened. What do you mean? These wings. They're connected to your nervous system already. That shouldn't be possible. You can feel when they're touched. I saw you shiver when I rubbed them. They've integrated with you like you were born with them. Naruto let out a deep sigh as he glanced at the ground. He would just have to get past this one more obstacle. What would people say if he entered Konoha in this state right now? How would they respond? Naruto, I don't know how the villagers will react. Your wings will draw a lot of attention and they act like your chain does. Subconsciously. They furl and unfurl as if it is second thought. I touched them just now to move them out of the way and they moved on their own accord. You didn't even realize you did it, did you? He didn't trust his voice yet, so he shook his head. When we get home, we're going straight to the tower. I want you to follow me and not respond to anyone, is that clear? Don't say anything. She stood up when he nodded. You have a clean bill of health, Naruto. But then, you never have anything wrong with you. No, nothing ever is wrong with him. But Tsunade. Sama, how are we going to get him back into the village without raising suspicion? With a growl, Tsunade turned to face Kakashi. If you want to be part of the conversation, Itachi, you shouldn't eavesdrop, just come right on in. We're going to walk beside him all the way to my office. If anyone tries to attack or do anything stupid, we're to neutralize the threat. Kakashi nodded and raised an eyebrow. He knelt in front of Naruto instead of bringing his book back to his nose, which surprised me. He had a half-lidded eye and a soft voice. I'm sorry, Naruto. Slowly, Naruto's head raised until he was looking directly at Kakashi. What? With a heavy sigh, Kakashi dropped his eyes to the floor. I'm sorry. For everything. Not being a better teacher, not helping you more, being preferential, everything. I've pushed you too far in some ways and not enough in others. I failed as a teacher and as a friend. Forgive me. Kakashi prostrated himself in front of Naruto, shocking everyone by putting his forehead to the ground. When he spoke, the blonde's unwavering silver eyes were slightly cracked. I can forgive you, Kakashi, but I won't forget. All I ask is that you not give me any reason to hold a grudge against you again. Forgiveness is not something to be taken lightly, don't make me regret it. The grin beneath Kakashi's mask was visible as he raised his head again to aim at Naruto. Naruto nodded to him and smiled slightly. Thank you, Naruto. I probably don't deserve it, but I've failed too many people without saying I'm sorry. I don't want our bond strained any more than it already is. Sakura looked perplexed as Naruto turned his head slightly. He raised his hand to silence her after noticing that her mouth was slightly open. Sakura, we'll talk later. Is Ten-chan okay? The pinkette looked at the girl with the brown hair, closed her mouth, and nodded. Tenten allowed the blood to return to her limbs as she limped over to Naruto on wobbly legs. As he held her, she fell against him, her arms encircling his torso. She could almost feel Tsunade's smirk, and she snarled a little when she heard Sakura and Kakashi chuckle at her tenderness. Now that we're good to go, we should get a move on. It'll be dark in a few hours. Sakura gave Naruto a slightly envious look as he nodded and gathered Tenten back into his arms. Hey, why doesn't anyone ever offer to carry me? Tenten gave the girl a giggle and protruded her tongue. Because you're too fat. Naruto was sufficiently motivated to run as quickly as he could by the waves of danger emanating from Sakura. As Sakura attempted to disfigure the couple, Tsunade and Kakashi laughed and trailed behind the escaping teenagers. Naruto cast a frustrated glance down at Tenten. Why the hell did you do that? Incentive for getting home sooner. As they got closer to the gates, Naruto was extremely anxious. Since it was getting close to evening and it was still light outside, everyone would either be going home or spending the night out. This was not something he was going to like at all. When Sakura saw that he was not even touching the ground, she had finally given up on catching them. Since there was no friction, he appeared to be gliding over it as he ran. When the danger had passed and they were back in the group, she resorted to giving them sour looks. Tenten had thoroughly enjoyed the chase. He kept squeezing her into his chest, which contributed to the crazy speeds they were traveling. She was just as anxious as Naruto now that they were home, though, and he continued to hold her hand for support. All she could hope was that nobody would attempt anything foolish. On the inside, Kakashi was anxious, but he had once again put his nose in his book. This would most likely become ugly. The general populace of Konoha believed Naruto to be a demon, so his appearance as an angel upon returning home would likely be interpreted as a violation of their religious convictions. A demon shouldn't attempt to imitate its better half, after all. As they got closer to the gate, Tsunade maintained a fixed gaze. The presence of Katetsu and Izumo on duty today pleased her. Her job was made easier by that. In reality, the two had been amazed by Naruto's transformations, particularly the hammer, and had always accepted him for who he was. They were able to appreciate a big weapon that required strength and skill to wield. As the five-person group frantically fled the village, they almost literally ran into Guy's team. Naruto and Lee collided, sending them both flying headfirst. Guy, Lee, and Neji had just returned from a brief mission while the craziness was down. A distraught Shizune greeted them at the Hokage tower when they reported, told them what had happened, and the three fled right away. In order to keep up with Guy and Lee, Neji pumped chakra into his legs as they dropped their weights. As the five figures approached, they instantly recognized Tenten's silhouette, as well as those of Sakura, Tsunade, and Kakashi. However, they failed to identify the winged figure, and it was already too late when they applied the brakes. Leading the group, Guy leapt over them and landed upright, skidding a few feet before coming to a stop. Being in the back and with his Byakugan turned on, Neji saw them coming and started to slow down in advance. Guy and Lee were in a cartwheel of arms, legs, and fluffy, white angel wings when Lee, who was directly behind Guy, failed to stop in time and crashed into the winged figure. Naruto and Lee received multiple quick glances at their respective attacker and landing pad as the others watched the two roll repeatedly. While Lee's eyes widened upon seeing the whisker marks, Naruto recognized the bowl cut instantly, but he was distracted by the silver eyes. Lee leapt to his feet and swung an accusing finger at the blonde as the snowball of limbs and dust stopped. "Nah, Naruto? Is that you?" With his wings beating the dust from his body, Naruto stood up and brushed himself off. The arrival of the three amazed members of Team Guy next to Naruto, who were soon joined by Katetsu and Izumo, caused the four who had been traveling with him to suppress their laughter. He was bombarded with questions until he lost patience. "Shut up." In record time, they were all silent. The five watched in fascination as Naruto huffed and allowed his wings to settle back down from their ruffled stage. "Lee, Guy, Neji, go check on Tenten. She's your teammate and friend. My situation can be explained later." Neji calmly followed the two beasts as they yelled, "Youth," and hurried over to show off their affection for the girl with the bun, much to her dismay. However, Katetsu and Izumo stayed. With a sigh, Naruto turned away from them. "Go ahead, I know what you want." With caution, the two moved forward and touched the fluffy feathers. After staring at one another and blinking, they both smiled and pulled a feather from the boy's wings. With a cry of agony, Naruto swung a wing at them both, sending them hurtling back toward their posts. Kakashi briefly removed his nose from his book to give the two some advice. "You shouldn't do that. Those things are pretty strong, as you found out." The pages of pure, unadulterated bliss instantly buried his nose again. With a sigh, Tsunade grabbed the two by the collars and returned them to the shack from which they had come. "Keep a circle around Naruto and try not to leave any room for any foolishness, and you two stay here. The rest of you, come with me." After giving their friend a nod, the ninjas surrounded him and went into the village. The only thing Naruto could hope for was that the streets would be empty. Unfortunately, they weren't. The streets were unusually crowded, and many people stopped to stare at the strange procession. Amidst a group of ninjas, there was a young man who looked like a blonde angel, with his pristine white wings flapping in the slight breeze. However, the most damning thing was that, upon closer inspection, the angelic man turned out to be a demon brat. The older generation simply stated that the demon was attempting to deceive them and pushed the children away who were staring in wonder at the winged man, but for Naruto, it was just another reminder of his childhood and another blow to his psyche. Many women who had initially swooned at the sight of him sneered and turned away, muttering about wolves in sheep's clothing. Given that he didn't even appear somewhat normal, how could he ever be accepted? He kept his eyes downcast as they walked, trying to block out the mumbles and curses he could hear plain as day. The only things that kept him moving forward were Tenten's and his friend's hand squeezes and shoulder pats. All he needed to do was make it to the tower, and he would be all right. The group stopped when a young boy, who couldn't have been older than 7 or 8, stepped in front of them. He strode forward without showing any signs of fear, and they watched in amazement as he approached Naruto. "Are you an angel?" Naruto smiled as he glanced down at the young boy. "I'm not an angel, sorry. Not just yet. The young boy pointed to the wings after nodding his head and placing a finger to his chin. Are those authentic? Naruto spread his wings wide, extending them past his friend's circle. They certainly are. Do you want to give them a touch? Tsunade was correct. It was a subconscious thing. He didn't even think about it when he did it, just like an arm or a leg. The little boy's face brightened and he nearly bounced toward the outstretched wings, his smile beaming as he rubbed the feathers in Naruto's as he fluttered his wings, fanning the child with a little breeze. Then, abruptly, the little boy spun around and screamed into the darkness. Hey, he's not frightening at all. Check it out. The group around Naruto grinned as he got an idea that he thought might be entertaining. A few young boys and girls appeared from the building's shadows, and they swiftly circled around him, touching his chain and petting his wings. Naruto sat down in the road and allowed them to satiate their curiosity. Naruto wasn't welcomed by the villagers very often. Want to witness a magic trick, guys? The idea of a magic trick made the kids' eyes light up, and they inquired as to what it was. I take it you've seen snake charmers? Their heads nodded in agreement. Well, I can charm my chain, but I can't charm snakes. For you, I can make it dance. After a moment of staring, they burst out laughing, and Naruto crossed his arms and wore a comical frown. Hey, why is it so funny? You can't charm something that isn't alive. Naruto smiled and turned to face his companions, who returned the smile. Want to place a wager? The children's eyes widened as the chain started to unwind from his waist and coil back like a cobra, its end serpentining back and forth, and they watched in awe as it left his waist and coiled up on the ground, undulating as it went. Naruto closed his eyes, left his wings spread, and started to whistle a nameless tune while he bobbed backward and forward to the beat. The children shrieked and hid behind Naruto's wings as he wowed them, and his friends had to suppress snickers as the chain moved toward them. Naruto stopped whistling and started to laugh, the chain halting in midair as the kids peeked back around his wings and the young boy whispered. It stopped. The boy squeaked and ducked behind the wing once more as the chain suddenly jerked its end in his direction. Naruto laughed and dropped his wings. Don't be scared. I used chakra to control the chain, so it isn't alive. It won't harm you. As the chain rewound around his waist and locked into place, they all watched as Naruto stood, wiped the dust from his pants, folded his wings back into their prone position, put his hands on his hips, and grinned at the children. Happy, Naruto watched them leave, turned to his friends, and froze when he saw what was behind them. They all nodded their heads and left laughing. Naruto frowned as he saw the villagers standing there with either awe or hatred in their eyes. He would never win them over, but he also detested those who were moved by him. He decided that apathy was preferable to hero worship, so he hung his head and walked on toward the tower. Let's go. Tenten sped up to walk beside him and put her arm around his, and they all followed him, glaring at those who had thrown hateful looks at him. Don't be concerned. The kids don't despise you, at least. Naruto kept his head down while nodding. Although they no longer despise me, what about when their parents speak to them? At this point, the group was standing in Tsunade's office with Naruto right in the center, and they listened to his story in wonder and stood back at attention when Tsunade, med, and folded her hands under her chin. Itachi wishes to use his strength against you, then? It sounds like he would do that. Back then, Tenten was merely bait. Is he aware of your supernatural powers? I didn't mention them, but he was definitely curious. I understand. I think it's time to reveal your true identity to everyone, Naruto. He sighed and nodded his head. He had never been good at sharing secrets. I am Cammy's fighter. I got the hammer, the chain, and now the wings from there. As her angel on earth, it is my responsibility to collect a soul that is highly corrupted for her. He closed his eyes and gazed out over their faces. I simply want you to know that Naruto is still me. I am neither a demon nor a monster. Before Sakura's snort caused the entire group to erupt in laughter, crickets had not even begun to chirp. Naruto, we are aware of your identity. It's difficult to forget you. But my appearance, Guy let the light flicker off his teeth and struck his famous, nice guy pose. Yosh. Naruto. Kun. Your youth glows brightly. The eyes and wings are merely a testament to your youthful radiance. Guy. Sensei. The sun is as bright as Naruto's flames of youth. You two need to shut up. She took a deep breath, turned to her boyfriend, and cringed as Tenten struck them both on the head and they sat down. Naruto, our opinions of you don't change just because you look different. I believed we had already discussed this. You are who you are. All you have are wings. Soft, fluffy, adorable wings. The snickers behind him weren't helping, and watching Tsunade bite her lip to contain her laughter wasn't helping either. She had started rubbing them without realizing it, and Naruto was feeling very uncomfortable. His eye was twitching, and he had started to shiver. Chan, would you please refrain from that? Grinning at him, she peered around the wing. Why? Tenten followed her finger down and her eyes were bugged as Tsunade coughed and pointed downward while maintaining a smirk. Naruto was trying his hardest not to move or fidget, and his gentle whimpers were pleasant to hear, but she let go of him for the time being. Now she had a weapon she could use against him. After assuring Naruto that they were still his friends, Tsunade shooed the others out of the office, and only when the door closed behind the final one did the other three hear a familiar voice. You've unlocked it at last, sooner than I anticipated. Naruto sighed as he turned to face the voice with his now silver eyes. Hello, Sanosuke. Don't bother getting up, please. I'm alone. I never just stop by to greet you. It's always business, brats who lack gratitude. Sanosuke gritted his teeth and took 2 more kunai, always trouble, from another ruined shirt. We were watching that fight, Naruto, but I'm glad you unlocked your last gift. You held back, but why? I didn't, Sanosuke growled as he leaned down to meet the boy's nose. Bullshit. Being called a liar all the time made Naruto angry. I wasn't being reserved. Why on earth don't people trust me? Because you were reserving yourself. Itachi could have been easily defeated by you. Why? Is the question. Naruto ruffled his feathers angrily and shook his head. I don't understand. Sanosuke crossed his arms and scowled. Naruto, are you really that terrified of your own strength? Did years of using the Kyuubi's power make you fearful of your own? You must release yourself. Make use of that power. You can use it. I'm not afraid of my power. So why do you sometimes shine brightly and other times you can't break free from a wet paper bag? You become afraid and suppress your own power whenever you sense it beginning to emerge. Only during your altercation with Gaara did power emerge. His gaze pinned the boy to the wall as he leaned in once more. You use borrowed power excessively. You have more than enough power on your own. Up until you became dependent on it, the Kyuubi's power was adequate as a backup. You started depending on someone else. He sneered, his teeth curling back. Are you curious about your behavior? Naruto made a menacing gesture with his wings spread wide in a growl. Don't you dare, Naruto, you're behaving just like him. That's correct, Jiraiya. He glanced to the corner and saw the white-haired man come out of the darkness. It might be true, but I'm not saying anything until I know who you are and what the hell you're doing threatening my student. Tsunade slapped her hand on the desk and let out a sigh. Sit down and relax, Jiraiya. Sit down, everyone. Sanosuke, tell me. Sanosuke sat down after giving Jiraiya a stern look. Gladly. Halfway through the angel's explanation, the 2 former teammates had decided that getting shit-faced was a good idea, and so far they had a few general points, so Tsunade rubbed her temples and handed the sake dish to Jiraiya once more. Because of his permanent wings, Naruto was able to move at extremely high speeds across the ground. Additionally, the eyes were permanent, signifying his position as Cammy's chosen warrior. In addition to being intimidating, silver is pure. Tenten thought the wings made him look cute. Cammy demanded that he shed his inhibitions after being dissatisfied with his battle with Itachi. Naruto enjoyed having his wings stroked. Akatsuki remained a bunch of jerks. Gazing at the angel, she inhaled deeply. So, how would you suggest training him? I propose that he join Jiraiya and me on a quick trip. I'm going to break down his barriers. Tsunade adopted a thoughtful expression and curled her fingers. What are you going to do? Sanosuke gave Jiraiya a scowl. Fix what the dumbass here did. What on earth does that signify? You instructed him to rely on a demon's strength rather than his own. Only in dire situations was Kyuubi's power intended to be used. He can use it however he pleases. I fail to see what the issue is. Sanosuke growled and wiped his hand across his face. This is the reason you're accompanying us. I want you to witness the boy's actual power. Since Cammy picked him, you haven't been present. Tenten slowly raised her hand, and Jiraiya sat back, frowning, unable to think of anything more to say. May I attend? Sanosuke nodded his head and grinned. If Tsunade permits it, you may. I have no influence over that. Well, what the devil is going on, given that you're already controlling 2 shinobi under my authority without my consent? Why don't you also take one of my finest kunoichis? Stupid ass angel. I'll assume she can come based on that. Within 2 days, I will come get you. Get ready. Tsunade sighed and called out to him, but he vanished without a trace, and Jiraiya followed, complaining to himself. Return in the morning, Jiraiya. I would like to talk to you about a few tactics. He had some thinking to do, so he nodded and walked out the window. She shook her head and turned back to face the two lovers. Go home and unwind, you two. Leave for the next 2 days. You two seem to have a lot on your plates in the days ahead. Naruto's wings scraped the doorframe as they nodded and walked out the door. As they entered Tenten's front door, Naruto sighed, wondering how he would sleep with the wings on his back. It would be uncomfortable. The wings can retract, you know. He turned and cocked his head toward Sanosuke. What are you saying? They can't always be taken back. Only when you're unconscious or sleeping, or when you need them to, like when you're taking a shower or something. How? If you're in a small area or want to sleep comfortably, your body will store them. It's a natural function, so don't worry. However, they remain present even when they're absent. In 2 days, I'll see you. Do nothing that I wouldn't do. Naruto nodded and entered the bedroom, wanting a shower badly at the moment, and, out of habit, he walked toward Tenten's voice when he heard her call. As he opened the bathroom door, he didn't really notice the fog, but he did notice Tenten naked. Will you please wash my back? Tenten moved toward him, grinning at his apparent interest as his eyes scanned her body as quickly as possible, soaking up the beauty. Will you? His wings struck the doorframe as he nodded and accepted the sponge from her. I am unable to. I can't get my wings to fly. They were as sensitive as the unsealed wings, and as they shrank until they disappeared into his back, Tenten stepped behind him and rubbed the marks, causing Naruto to shudder. She smiled, pressed herself into his back, and wrapped her arms around him so that they rested just above his painfully erect penis. She then leaned up and whispered into his ear. After our ordeal, I think a little heavy petting is in order, but I'm not putting it in. In addition, you've spent too much time in those pants. She loved being in charge, so she reached down and yanked off his pants in one fluid motion, kissing the back of his neck as his dick jumped upward as she grasped it. He gasped. Oh no, is there anyone who needs to be released? Naruto nodded and started to move with her pumps, smiling when she sensed his tension and gave him a base squeeze that caused a grunt of pain. What the devil, Tenten? I was near. His cock was pressed between her and him as she reached up and kissed him. And you'll come very close on multiple occasions. You'll be so desperate that you'll comply with my requests by the time I let you in. She growled and squeezed him once more, making Naruto wince. Have you been speaking with Kurenai and Anko once more? Maybe. It was going to be a long night, so Naruto rolled his eyes and gave in to her demands. Long. And enjoyable. Naruto was about to fall asleep when a kunai swished through the night and into the wall above him. He reached up and pulled it down, sliding the note off of it. Tenten was lying snuggled into his side, sighing happily after her own orgasms. She had no idea the boy had such skilled fingers, so she had limited their encounter to hands only. Oral, she said, would be a treat for another day. At midnight, meet me on the Yondaime's head. I want to talk to you alone, without Kisame, Tenten, distractions, or deceit. Itachi. Slipping out of bed with a frown, Naruto spread out his wings and flew as fast as he could to the mountain, where he saw a dark-haired man lit by the moonlight. Isn't that Naruto-kun? The moon's pale light is very serene. Itachi, what do you want? To converse. Not a bit more, not a bit less. Not a lie. No tricks, no deceit. Just two shinobi conversing. With his arms folded and his wings spread wide, Naruto's glowing silver eyes were highlighted by the moonlight behind him. You have 5 minutes. Itachi slowly turned to face the angelic figure behind him, and as he saw the boy in full view, his eyes widened a little. With his wings spread wide for the world to see, he looked both menacing and serene. But the thing that bothered him the most were the eyes. He had faced the world's top 3 dujutsu, but nothing had prepared him for Uzumaki Naruto's dazzling silver eyes. The only indication that he was uncomfortable was a slight shiver. Naruto gave the Uchiha a suspicious look. The man was still dangerous even though his eyes weren't changed to those of the Mangekyo or the typical Sharingan. Itachi's eyes faltered a little, and Naruto narrowed his eyes and flapped his wings in frustration. Drop the genjutsu around your eyes, Itachi. I thought you said no deception. Itachi allowed the illusion to fade, and his mouth twitched a little. We're shinobi, Naruto-kun. Deception is our trade. Tell me, what has happened to you? With his gaze fixed on anything but the Uchiha, Naruto stayed still. I don't wish to talk about it. Was it the Kyuubi? No, I see. They were silent until Naruto lost patience once more. What do you want, Itachi? I don't have all night. Naruto quickly grew weary of the game as the Uchiha pretended to ignore him. His wings folded back to their prone position, fluttering slightly as he turned to leave. I want to test myself, at my fullest potential, against you, at your fullest potential. Naruto halted his progress and slowly spun around, avoiding Itachi. And how do you propose we do that? I constantly have you and the Akatsuki after me and you always have Sasuke on your tail. We can't just fight for the sake of fighting, we'll both be killed. And I thought you were a genius. And I thought you had become smarter. I'm proposing we join forces. As the monument rolled over in a thunderous silence, not even crickets dared to chirp. What? I propose we form an alliance. I help you covertly get rid of the Akatsuki, one by one, and you help me attain what I desire from Sasuke. And that is... his eyes. Naruto frowned and raised an eyebrow. He wanted to see what he could get out of Itachi, even though he already knew the answer. Why? That is for me to know. You just need to agree to the circumstances. Once all of our obstacles are out of the way, I desire a one-on-one fight, on neutral ground, to see how far our limits can go. That's insane. Itachi's voice grew somewhat harsh and his eyes narrowed. Excuse me? That's insane. You're talking about wiping out the most powerful ninjas in the world. My mission is to rid the world of Orochimaru and Uchiha Madara. I don't have time for your petty delusions of grandeur. How do you know about Madara? For a fool, Naruto cursed himself. He ought not to have made that mistake. Itachi would be wary now. The Uchiha appeared before him in an instant, his hand encircling Naruto's throat. How do you know about Madara? I have my ways, I know he pulls your strings. He thinks he does. You know more than you let on Uzumaki. I need your help and you need mine. This pact is beneficial for both of us. I will give you time to think on it. I give you 1 week and then I shall seek you out again. I expect an answer. Naruto grabbed Itachi's arm before he vanished. The Uchiha was taken aback by the firm hold and was confronted by those damnable silver eyes that appeared to pierce the soul. Itachi, if I accept this, if I do, then I want no duplicity. This is between you and me, no one else. If we do have this battle, you have to promise me one thing. And that is, that, win or lose, once the battle is finished and we have both risen to new heights, that you will cease your quest for the one who can kill you. Itachi shrugged his arm away from the blonde after giving a slow nod. I believe that, after our battle, and it will come to be, that I will have no reason to pursue someone to kill me anymore. If you cannot accomplish that, then I am doomed to walk this world forever. Naruto gave him a final piece of advice as the Uchiha started to fade away. Remember Itachi, immortality does not mean one is invincible, it just means that death is postponed. Itachi would spend many nights reflecting on those words. When Naruto returned through the door, a Tenten in a rage greeted him. She caught him by both arms and slammed him against the wall as his wings retracted into their tattoos as he entered the house. Where were you? Out. Her eyes watered and she snarled. She seized him once more and pushed him more forcefully against the wall. Damn it Naruto. I know you were with Itachi. How could you do that? He could have killed you. He can't kill me. Her teeth clenched impossible tight, and her eyes burned with rage. Oh, so you think just because you went toe-to-toe with him once and survived that you're Billy Badass and can take on the world? I'm not losing you over stupid shit Naruto. You can't just go off and take the world's burdens on your shoulders. His eyes grew softer, and he slowly blinked as he met hers. He leaned forward and gave her a forehead kiss. I'm not taking the burdens of the world on my shoulders Chan. In fact, I may have just gained an unlikely ally to help alleviate some of that weight. She allowed him to guide her to the couch, where she leaned against his bare shoulder. Who? Itachi. He sensed her tensing up and prepared himself for the ensuing yelling, however, it never did. Rather, a low murmur pierced the obscurity. Why? With a sigh, he put his arm around her shoulder and drew her in before he closed his eyes and yelled. You two might as well come out, I know you're there. Tenten saw Jiraiya suddenly appear by the wall in front of them and Sanosuke emerge from the shadows of her kitchen. With a sigh, Sanosuke moved forward. I guess you knew I was there on the monument the whole time. I did. And you said nothing? Naruto gave a shrug. No reason to give away a trump card. I replaced myself with a clone before I arrived there anyway, in case he tried to use Tsukiyomi on me. I was behind you the whole time. And me? Naruto smirked as he snorted and turned to face the Toad Sannin. It's impossible not to find you. You smell of sake and cheap sex. When Jiraiya heard Tenten laugh, he stopped grinding his teeth and composed himself. The boy had just been insulted again, and it was too early to kill him. So, brat, what are you going to do? Accept or decline? I haven't made up my mind yet. It's a tough decision. He would be a valuable ally, but could I trust him? Jiraiya sat in a chair and shook his head. I say no, he's a traitorous bastard, only caring for his own goals. He'll betray you eventually. Naruto gave a nod. I know that, but that's all Itachi knows how to do is betray. I don't even know if he's honest with himself half the time. The question is, at what point would he betray us? Or would he at all? If you can provide him with the challenge he seeks, Itachi may become loyal to you, until your inevitable battle. The enemy of the enemy is my friend, after all. Tenten wasn't as impressed by Sanosuke's remarks, but Naruto nodded. But Itachi is the enemy. Just because he would betray his comrades now doesn't mean we can trust him fully. Just as he can't trust us fully. It's a two-way street here. The only thing Naruto and Itachi have to go on are their word. I say go for it. I'll remain in the background when you speak to him and can notify the others if you need help. I'm not allowed to interfere, but I can do that at least. Naruto gave a nod of agreement. Jiraiya simply appeared thoughtful, but Tenten swung her head back and forth between the two angels. At last, he raised his voice and expressed his thoughts. While I don't like the idea of teaming up with a bastard like Itachi, I have to say that his plan works both ways. You both get rid of Sasuke, you both get rid of Madara, and you both get rid of Akatsuki. The only thing he appears to want out of this is a final battle between you two. For a few minutes, everyone in the group was silent as they sorted through their ideas to come up with something to say next. At last, Naruto had something to say. I don't think we should tell Tsunade about this. We shouldn't tell anyone for that matter. Tenten gave a nod of agreement. I think so too. It would be bad if she found out and she'd try to stop you for sure. I'm not too sure about this myself. How am I going to help? Naruto gave her a cheek kiss and smiled down at her. By being Tenten. Don't worry, I'm sure we'll have you kicking S-class ninja ass in no time. Sanosuke cleared his throat and nodded. I believe that's enough excitement for one day. Jiraiya, let's go. I'll see you all on the day of departure. Sanosuke vanished as the three nodded and looked on. Jiraiya turned to face Naruto after letting out a sigh. It was a long time since he had seen his pupil. That's a hell of a wardrobe change, kid. What the hell has been going on, besides the obvious? Tenten yawned, and Naruto moved her to lie on the couch with her head resting in his lap. He sent a clone to get a blanket and then sat down to listen to the lengthy story. This might take a while, Senin, so get comfortable. The only thing Jiraiya could do was shake his head in shock. He had just heard a story that sounded like something he would have written when he was younger. Right now, he wished he had a drink. Holy shit, is there anything I didn't miss while I was gone? Well, no, in embarrassment. Jiraiya hung his head. How could things have changed so drastically in just a few months since he had left? His clumsy pupil was no longer clumsy, and wow, things had changed. Jiraiya got up and walked toward the door. With a questioning gaze, Naruto called out to the older man, asking him where he was heading. Jiraiya's eyes were sad as he turned. I'm going to mourn the loss of my student. You're Naruto, but you're no longer the Naruto I trained. The Naruto I trained is long gone. Now I'm supposed to correct the mistakes I made, but I'm not sure if that's possible when I was trying to do the best I could with what I knew. I'm not even sure where I supposedly screwed up. As his mentor slowly closed the door behind him, Naruto watched with sadness. He had no idea what Jiraiya was going through at the moment. The poor guy just didn't seem to be able to get a break. You could have said something, you know. Sadness remained in Naruto's eyes as he gazed down at Tenten. How long have you been awake? Since you started telling him what has happened in the past few months. You could have let him down a little bit easier, you know. I never was good at being subtle. He needs to know that you don't blame him, Naruto. He was just trying to do his best. Who in their right mind knows how to deal with Jinchurikis? It's not like it's a documented experience. No, but I shouldn't have been taught to rely so much on the Kyuubi's power. I should have been cultivating my own, improving myself without the fox's help. And you blame Jiraiya for that? No, I think we're equally to blame. Him for pushing the issue and me for going along with it. I just want to get better. I want Jiraiya to be proud of me for the things he taught me, not the things he messed up on. He's not perfect, but he strives for perfection. It eats him up inside. Tenten stood up and extended her hand to Naruto after sitting up and giving him a hug. Let's go to bed. We'll deal with all this in the morning. Taking her hand, Naruto glanced at the clock. It is morning. Around noon, Tenten woke up in Naruto's embrace. She scowled as she saw his brow furrowed. He appeared to be disturbed by current affairs even while he slept. She wanted to do more to help. She might be more useful on the trip. She had essentially kept Naruto in line by teaching him Kenjutsu. Other than that, though, she had only provided emotional support. She could have done more, but it was more than he had ever had in his life. She reminded herself of that. She was so absorbed in her thoughts that she failed to notice Naruto awaken and gaze at her, her anxious expression bothering him. Whatever you're thinking, Chan, stop. She opened her eyes and fixed her gaze on him. I was just thinking about how you could help more. You help plenty. I could do more. You do enough. I want to do more. See, that's different, but I don't know how you can. As he cupped his hand beneath her chin and watched her head tilt downward, he brought her eyes back to his. I don't know how you can, but Sanosuke might. We can ask him later. He stroked her cheek with his thumb as she grinned. We've only got today left. Let's go enjoy ourselves at least. Tenten, dressed only in her panties and an excessively loose muscle shirt, nodded and got to her feet, cracking her back. She wiggled her butt toward Naruto, who was hypnotized by her, as she turned around. See something you like, Naru-kun? Incredulously, he nodded his head up and down. She hiked her pants up and smiled. Too bad. We need to go out, remember? With a growl, he straightened up and turned away from her. Oh, look at that. I seem to have fallen out of my boxers. Oh well, no PP for Tenten. Naruto swiftly jerked his pants up and spun around to face a pouting Tenten waist. Level with him as the girl lunged over the bed to get a look. He smiled as he slowly lowered himself until his nose touched hers. Tisk, Chan, you're such a naughty girl. I can't help it when you're flaunting things I want in front of me. That's the pot calling the kettle black, I believe. She sat up on her knees behind him as he sat down on the bed and reached for his shoes. In the full light, the tattoos appeared much more detailed and completely different. Naruto shuddered as she ran her finger along the edge of one. Cold. No, it feels like you're actually touching my wing. It feels like you were running your finger along the top of the right one. I guess that's why Sanosuke said, even when they're not there, they're there. Tenten gave him a nod and allowed him to get up. If Naruto's wings materialized, none of the shirts he looked for would fit. Tenten was a skilled seamstress, which was fortunate for him. It involved handling sharp objects. You frequently make holes in clothes. Give me your shirt. As he dutifully handed her the shirt, he watched with wide eyes as she sliced off a piece of the back. What are you doing? You're going to ruin my shirt. Tenten gave him a frustrated glare before carrying on with her work. I'm cutting it so that you can wear a shirt in public. We can't go some places if you're not wearing a shirt. I'm pretty sure having gigantic wings is another thing that'll get me banned. And I'm pretty sure that with enough practice you'll be able to retract them at will. If they retract when you need them to subconsciously, then with enough effort you can make them retract on command. I guess. He pulled the shirt on over his head after she threw it to him, the chain winding around his waist. Tenten followed him to the door, gathering her bag and shoes. Well, let's see if that shirt can fit your wings. The tattoos glistened and the wings slowly emerged from Naruto's back after they had gone outside and he was out of the doorway. As he extended the wings to their maximum length and allowed them to return to a prone position, she watched in fascination. That feels good. I needed to stretch those kinks out. Unable to resist, Tenten buried her face between the wings and rubbed her cheeks together. Fluffy, I am not fluffy. Whatever you say, Fluffy. She gave a little squeak as he huffed and batted her with the wing. Let's go get some lunch. I haven't had ramen in forever. It felt like an eternity since Tucci and Ayame had last seen Naruto. The last time he had visited, he had introduced Tenten, his new girlfriend, and destroyed their entire stock of ramen varieties. They didn't believe the rumors they had heard that the demon child had disguised himself as an angel to better conceal who he really was. Imagine their astonishment when a winged, blonde man passed beneath their establishment's flaps. Hiya Ayame, old man. It's been a while. Before a grunting sound and a girl with a bun finally pushed past the feathery wings, the two Ichirakus gaped at the sight of their favorite customer. Don't block the damn doorway, Naruto. I'm hungry too. He rubbed the back of his head and drew the wings back a little. Hey, sorry Chan. I was just showing them my wings. The two were nowhere to be seen when he turned his head back to speak to them. Tenten shuddered as the father and daughter pair started examining the wings, and he watched with a wry smile. Ayame. Tucci was amazed by them. Well, she just thought it made him look more adorable. You two can stop fondling me, you know. Tucci paused and averted his gaze, as if embarrassed. But with a faint flush on her face, Ayame continued to rub the feathers. Ah, but it feels so nice. Do I have to? Yes. She turned to see where the voice had come from and discovered a Tenten sitting on the stool next to Naruto, looking a little irritated. Ayame gave the weapons mistress a cheeky smile, but decided against it. It wasn't her beauty that earned her the name. Oh, alright. I guess since he's technically yours, I'll lay off, but if he ever becomes available. He won't. As Ayame combed out a flyaway hair, she scowled and sighed. I was just teasing you Tenten-san. There's no reason to get all huffy. Naruto sighed as he glanced back and forth between the two of them. Tenten was far too guarded. Chan, stop that. You know Ayame is just teasing. Ayame, don't mess with her like that. You know how she gets. Both women looked away from Naruto, one out of embarrassment and the other in humiliation. With another sigh, he took a bowl from Tucci. Thanks, old man. Itadakimasu. Next came Ayame, who vanished from view and then reappeared on a stool beside Tenten, passing her bowl. Ayame put a hand to Tenten's ear and slid as close as she could. So, is he good to you? Tenten glanced at her, but in between mouthfuls, he whispered back. Yes, he is. Better than anybody I could ever imagine. Why? Ayame smiled and straightened her posture. We always worried when he was little that he'd never find anybody, because of, well, you know. He never really knew how to act around girls, so we thought he'd be kind of awkward. Tenten blew on her noodles while grinning. It was kind of hard at first. He was really dense. It took forever to get him to see me as more than a friend. But once he did, it was like the floodgates opened. He's a perfect gentleman. Behind her, she heard a loud slurp and let out a dramatic sigh. Most of the time, Ayame nodded her head and giggled before getting up to assist her father in the kitchen. Today, it's likely that the boy would eat them out of business. That's good to hear. I'm glad he found someone like you Tenten. You'll be good for each other. What about you? Why didn't you ever go after him? Ayame twirled a strand of hair nervously in her fingers as she flushed. Well, I might have except he's a little too young for me. That, and he'd eat us out of house and home. I don't think we could afford the grocery bill between him and whatever kids we might have had. Tenten laughed and went back to her ramen, eating it fast so it wouldn't get cold. Naruto received his 15th bowl from Ayame, who reappeared around the counter. While they conversed, the boy had been occupied. For the remainder of the day, Naruto and Tenten did not do much. All of their friends appeared to be on missions for some reason, which worked out well for them. Since they had no idea how long they would be gone, they didn't want to have to say goodbye. After returning home and getting ready for the journey, they dozed off together. They hurried to the gate and saw Sanosuke and Jiraiya standing solemnly. The older man's hangdog appearance caused Naruto to frown. He didn't deserve it. There and then he made up his mind. This was not how he could have Jiraiya the entire time. Sanosuke waved as he saw them approaching. Good morning. I take it you both slept well? The angel grinned as the two nodded. Good. Let's get going then. Before we go, I want to talk to Jiraiya in private. Despite raising an eyebrow, the angel gestured for Tenten to follow him as he left the gate. The girl whispered in Naruto's ear and kissed him on the cheek. Just tell him what needs to be said. With a nod, Naruto observed the two standing far away, anticipating their arrival. Jiraiya waited for a verbal assault while keeping his head down. Jiraiya. Sensei. Jiraiya jerked up her head. In all the years they had spent traveling together, the brat had never referred to him as sensei. He observed with suspicion as Naruto appeared to have trouble speaking. I don't blame you, and you shouldn't blame yourself either. It's both of our faults I'm like this. We both could have done things differently, but we didn't. We have the opportunity to undo the damage done though, and perhaps, maybe rid the world of a great menace. Jiraiya nodded, and it appeared that some of the light returned to his eyes. How do you propose we do this, Naruto? With a smile, the blonde gestured for them to begin walking. One day at a time, arrow. Senin. One day at a time. The corners of Jiraiya's lips slightly raised as he locked steps with his pupil. It was time for him to make amends for his past mistakes. Take each day as it comes. A kunai whistled through the night air as they were all seated by the campfire just outside River Country's boundary. Watching for any indications of animosity, the four of them rolled out of the light and into the bushes. With Samahada on his shoulder and Kisame at his side, Itachi emerged in the firelight. Have you come to a decision, Naruto-kun? Do you accept? Kisame scowled and nervously fingered Samahada. What the hell are you talking about, Itachi? The Uchiha pivoted and gave his partner, Mangekyo, a fierce glare. Silence. Don't speak unless spoken to. Kisame calmed down, but he was still cautious. The way this was developing didn't sit well with him. Naruto-kun, have you accepted or not? With his hammer in his right hand, his wings slightly spread, and his eyes gleaming in the firelight, Naruto slowly arose from the darkness. I have. I'll go along with your idea as long as it benefits both of us. As soon as it starts turning in your favor, I'll end the partnership. Itachi gave a nod. I agree. I too shall end our partnership if things swing in your favor. I still demand our fight, even if our alliance sours. Naruto gave a nod of agreement. Weary of being on the outside, Kisame swung Samahata from his shoulder while nervously glancing between Itachi and Naruto. Itachi, what the hell are you talking about? Alliance? What damned alliance? What the hell's going on? Itachi kept his eyes on Naruto, ignoring his fish-like companion. Consider this my gift to you, as proof of my loyalty to the pact. Itachi turned to Kisame and said a single word that the man hoped he would never hear again. Tsukiyomi. In an attempt to locate himself, Kisame spun around and around in the red and black world. Itachi should know how to break out because he had mentioned the move enough, but his attempts were in vain. Itachi was in front of him when he was soon nailed to a cross. Why Itachi? You know pain. Sama will kill you for this. Zetsu has been following us the whole time. He'll find out and he'll kill you. Zetsu is inconsequential. He'll be taken care of immediately after I'm through with you. Now Kisame, prepare to meet your death. This can't kill me, Itachi. I'm too strong for anything you can throw at me. Your body is strong, fool, but your mind has always been weak. I believe I'll make your heart burst from fear. Now let's dig a little. What does Hoshigaki Kisame fear the most? I ain't telling you shit, traitor. Kisame was so terrified by the insane smile that spread across Itachi's face. You don't have to. I know what your fear is. Kisami's eyes went blank, and Naruto saw the man scream in pain before collapsing to the ground. Itachi jolted out of his reverie and gestured toward a nearby tree. Destroy it. Without hesitation, Naruto struck the tree with his hammer, destroying it. Zetsu burst from the trunk before the hammer touched the bark. Itachi, you traitor. You will be killed for this. Pain. Sama will destroy you. So I've heard. Tell me, Naruto, do you know how the Akatsuki disposes of its victims? No. Itachi gestured toward the hybrid of man and plant. He devours them. Don't you, Zetsu? Pain. Sama, allow me the honor of disposing of his enemies. You, Jinchuriki, will be next. Zetsu had to contend with Naruto's full rage before he could move. Front line combat had never been Zetsu's forte. He liked the shadows and taking advantage of the terrain. He collected information for the Akatsuki for this reason. However, that did not preclude him from caring for a brat who was too big for his pants. Knowing that he would be destroyed if the hammer clipped him, Zetsu ducked and dodged it. Over the past few months, he had spent enough time observing the boy to have a solid sense of his style. He would always use the hammer and the chain together. He hadn't anticipated the role the wings would play in this. Naruto swung the hammer forcefully and allowed his momentum to propel him forward. One of the wings struck Zetsu squarely in the head, sending him flying back as he moved in to stab him in the back. The plant man sat up and shook his head blearily. This was not what was expected. He had to hurry back to Pain Sama and inform him of Itachi's treachery. But he discovered that his hands and arms were bound. Naruto had only needed that brief diversion. As Zetsu flew, the chain followed him, and as soon as he hit the ground, it clamped around his hands and wound around his arms to prevent jutsus. With wide, irate, and terrified eyes, the plant man watched as what appeared to be the angel of death fell upon him. You can't kill me. I am a member of Akatsuki. We exist to rule. Pain Sama will destroy you. Raising his hammer high overhead, Naruto's lip curled back in a sneer. Because his sins were too great, this monster had to perish. Guilty. The image of Naruto with his wings spread wide and a disgusted expression on his face was the last thing Zetsu saw of this world. His head was struck by the hammer, scattering pieces of his skull and brain all over the place. The true Zetsu had been that. Itachi verified that green blood had leaked from the neck of the body. Despite his caution and paranoia, the man was certain that his fellow Akatsuki would not turn on Pain. It was certain death to do so. Turning back to Itachi, Naruto whipped his hammer backwards to remove any remaining brain and blood. What happened to Kisame? I used Tsukiyomi to show him his greatest fear. He died of a heart attack. Such an ignoble defeat. Such a horrible way for a ninja to go. And Zetsu? Do you feel nothing for his death? No, we were partners in a group of convenience. It could very well have been me there. Zetsu was careless this time. Had he actually been serious and not been shocked by my betrayal, he would have fled to Pain. His death will make things easier. There will be no one following us as I pretend to hunt you. Stepping forward, Sanosuke placed his hand on Naruto's shoulder. Are you all right? You just killed a guilty man. Do not let his death weigh on your conscience. Gradually, Naruto turned to face Sanosuke. I did what had to be done. I didn't want to kill him, but it was necessary and his crimes were many. I can only hope Cammy will forgive me. Men this evil don't belong on this world, Naruto. They'll upset the balance. That's why you're here. It's what you were chosen to do. Naruto glanced at Jiraiya and Tenten and nodded. The two had a different appearance. Together, they strode forward. Jiraiya to Naruto, Tenten to Sanosuke. I'm proud of you, brat. I didn't think you could actually kill a man like that. You're truly a ninja in my eyes now. I'll help however I can. Naruto smiled slightly at him. Thanks, Arrow, Senin. Meanwhile, Tenten was conversing with Sanosuke. I want to help. I want to help him. Teach me how to help him. Sanosuke nodded, smiling. It's about time. I didn't think you'd ever ask. The girl with the bun looked at him bewildered. You were waiting for me to ask, of course. What? You thought that just because you were his soulmate you got to sit back on an easy ride and teach him kenjutsu? No, that's not true at all. We just had to get your weapon for you. Tenten turned back to Jiraiya and Naruto, who were now listening intently. What weapon? I have a holy weapon. The angel gave a nod. Well, where is it? Sanosuke indicated Kisami's position. That is your weapon. But that weapon has been used for ill. How can it be holy? A weapon is only that, a weapon. How it is used is up to the wielder. The Kusanagi blade is a holy weapon and yet, Orochimaru uses it with no side effects. This is another example. Sanosuke approached the enormous sword and attempted to seize it, but Tenten stopped him. Don't. The last time someone grabbed that besides Kisame, their hand was impaled by spikes from the hilt. The girl winced when Sanosuke gave her a stern look. Don't interrupt if you want me to teach you. This is your sword now, take it. With hesitation, she extended her hand and finally caught the hilt, then raised it in the air. It felt surprisingly weightless. That was her thought. That's because it's yours. Kisame could barely hold it aloft when he first got it, and that's because he obtained it through dubious means. The sword finally bent to his will over time and became his. But this is not its true appearance. What do you mean? This sword has, over time, shaped itself to become like its master. Sharkskin is not even its real name. What is its real name? Sanosuke turned away from her, grinning. That is for you to find out. I will not help you until you can show this sword its true self. Tenten gazed at the sword while holding it high. I will. They turned to see Itachi standing by the fire after hearing a cough behind them. Might I suggest we dispose of these bodies and then settle down to talk about the future? Jiraiya left to dispose of the bodies in the Fire Mountain Toad's belly after the group nodded. Upon his return, he took a seat across from Itachi and surveyed the group. Let's get a plan going. Uchiha, tell us what you know and we'll swap information. Itachi closed his eyes and nodded, then opened them to show his typical coal-black irises. Very well. Tenten nervously fidgeted with her new sword. It is likely that she could anticipate the same outcome if Naruto's hammer changed while he was asleep. She pondered whether she would receive wings, despite the gravity of the situation, to emphasize the fact that they were destined to be together. Chan, pay attention. She regained her composure and placed the sword on her knees. Knowing that she now owned the sword that had once almost killed her made her feel weird. It's definitely an odd feeling. Itachi glanced from face to face. He had a hostile relationship with Naruto. He had made enough attempts to apprehend the boy to make them more than just acquaintances. They were fierce rivals who had been brought together by a shared foe. He was cautious around Jiraiya. Keiji and Wily, the Toad Sannin was a vicious foe. When the man was in the Akatsuki, Orochimaru might have ridden him off as a fool, but Itachi was wiser. Realizing your full potential was preferable to having the world view you as a fool. Itachi was aware of the man's talent. Despite being one of the world's most formidable ninjas, the man had a kind heart. He would still kill a threat, though. He was vaguely aware of the weapon's mistress. When you're a thick-headed idiot like Kisame, it's unfair to say that she was weak based on his former partner's one battle with her. Because of the trees, he was unable to see the forest. Additionally, he frequently undervalued his opponents to the point where someone who wasn't even a significant threat could become enraged with him and hurt him. He had lacked intelligence and was all brawn. He was paired with Itachi for that reason. However, Tenten was renowned for his exceptional shooting skills across the nations. Her weapons were blown off course by wind jutsu, the only thing that could stop her. Apart from that, the girl was a formidable opponent as long as she was upright and holding a pointed, sharp object. Kisami's sword was now in her possession. He had no idea who the fourth member was. The reason the brown-haired man stood out was because he didn't do anything particularly noteworthy. Itachi was concerned because he was unremarkable and unexceptional. The man was a variable that was unknown. Itachi detested unknowable factors. His life was never easier because of them. I know of 3 of you, but the 4th is not known to me. Tell me what your name and purpose is here. Sanosuke crossed his arm and raised an eyebrow. And why should I tell you anything? I believe you're the one wanting favors here. Information will be given as equivalent exchange. I don't know who you are, stranger. I'd just like to know whom I'm dealing with. My name is Sanosuke. That's all you need to know. There was no discernible sign of agitation, though Itachi's lips curved downward slightly into a frown. He would just need to gradually coerce the man into giving him information. For now, though, he needed to lay out his goals. We've eliminated 2 members of Akatsuki at the moment, 3 if you include myself. Having Zetsu dead is a huge boon. The man was our information gatherer, and without him lurking around, our movements and plans should be unseen. I will tell Pain and Madara that Kisame died fighting Jiraiya as I handled Naruto. Kun and Zetsu was taken by surprise by this Sanosuke. He's an unknown variable, so it shouldn't sound too far-fetched. After nodding his head, Naruto had an epiphany. Where are their rings? Itachi's eyes grew a little wider. Every time he saw him, the boy grew more intelligent. I have them on my person. Why? Palm up, the blonde extended his hand. Give me Zetsu's. Why? Naruto sighed as he realized he had caught Itachi's attention. The man refused to relinquish the goods without a reason. Getting Kisame's ring would be one of the first things you did if he died, correct? Well, let's say you had to beat a hasty retreat and left Zetsu's behind. I'd rather you didn't have that one. Leaning back and closing his eyes, Itachi considered his next response. No, Naruto snarled and furrowed his brow. Why not? Because these rings are more than mere decoration. They allow us to teleport our shadows to the extraction site and help with the beasts. They also allow Pain to monitor us if need be. Everyone became tense all of a sudden. If that were true, then why the hell haven't you thrown them away? We don't need to be monitored if we're going to do this. Calm yourself. I am the apprentice of Uchiha Madara. I don't need to be monitored. Besides, to monitor us would take an extreme amount of chakra on Pain's part, and he simply doesn't have the time or need to waste his chakra seeing what his agents are up to. I'll keep the rings though, to prove that the other 2 are dead. The only way these rings come off is if the person is dead. Naruto shifted his weight and nodded. His butt was starting to nod off. Tell us your plan for getting rid of Akatsuki. You'll kill them one at a time. That's the plan. You're not going to help. With the stoic Uchiha, nobody was certain, but Itachi sighed what might have been an exasperated sigh. I can't help with all of them. It would be very suspicious if every time I went out to face you I came back alone and with a dead partner. You'll have to defeat some of them on your own. Despite how much Naruto disliked that, he crossed his arms and sat back. He had finished his inquiries. Tenten wasn't, though. Itachi, what are your plans for Sasuke? My brother, I will deal with him on my own. I will only ask for your assistance in dealing with his new team. That is all. They had stopped questioning him, he noticed as he glanced around the group. It was his turn now. Tell me, Naruto-kun, about your changes. Naruto gave Itachi a menacing smile after severing his eyes. You don't tell me what you want with Sasuke's eyes, so why should I tell you about any of my changes? Itachi stood up, his eyes narrowing. Well, if you won't answer my questions, then I'll be leaving to report to Madara. I hope our plan has success. Naruto stood up and nodded. The blonde held out his hand, and Itachi watched. In a show of goodwill, Itachi, I offer my hand to you. As long as you don't betray me, I won't betray you. As Itachi's hand slowly extended toward Naruto's, the group anxiously awaited the Uchiha's feminine hand to encircle Naruto's big one. Naruto snarled at the man after firmly squeezing the Uchiha's hand and drawing him in until they were nose to nose. If any of my people get hurt because of one of your fuck-ups, I'll kill you. Slowly, that crazy grin appeared on Itachi's face, and he also tightened his hold. And if you in any way, form, or fashion mess this up, I shall take you into Tsukiyomi and make you watch the Kyuubi's attack over and over. As the tension increased, the two continued to stare at one another until Naruto finally spoke. Clear. Crystal. Likewise. They both returned to their normal facial features as they let go of one another and moved apart. Well then, I must be going. Good luck to you all, and it goes without saying that when next we meet, attack as if you mean to kill, otherwise our charade will be worthless. The group watched Itachi shunshine away while nodding. Naruto released a breath he was unaware he had been holding as he turned to face his allies. Well, let's plan for the future, might as well get a system hammered out. The others are in complete agreement. In front of the other three was Sanosuke. He wanted a tight ship because this was his show for the time being. Alright. Here's what's going to happen. Naruto is going to further his training in being Cammy's warrior under me. Jiraiya will help and Tenten will be undergoing her own training as well. In between, I'm sure we'll have some missions from Tsunade and the Akatsuki will attack as well. We'll have to be on guard the whole time. Tell me Sanosuke, since you wouldn't tell me before, where did I mess up in Naruto's training? It wasn't that you messed up Jiraiya, it's that you went about things in the wrong way. Naruto shouldn't have relied on the Kyuubi's power to do things. I know you wanted him to utilize it as his, but the fact remains that it isn't his. It's a foreign substance that does his body more harm than good. But the seal is not all powerful. The man that made the seal was fallible and as such, the seal is fallible. Naruto has finally succeeded in locking away the Kyuubi for good it seems though. Jiraiya sat in disbelief. How is that possible? What do you mean he locked it away? He didn't tell you about the dreams did he? Well, yeah. But that's all they are is dreams, right? Sanosuke placed his hands behind his back and shook his head. They were dreams and yet, they were so much more. Every time Naruto had a dream that altered his reality, it was a life-changing experience that stood outside of time. Every time his hammer changed, when he received his chain, when he met Cammy. These all happened outside of time and within his own realm of the mind. Jiraiya gave a headshake. I don't understand. I mean, if it happened in his mind, how could it be real out here? It takes faith, Jiraiya. You have to have faith that things will work out. You tried your best, I know you did, but in the end, the way you did things was wrong. We need to fix these mistakes and put Naruto back on the right track. Jiraiya appeared dejected, and Naruto was hurt to see his mentor in such pain. Tell me, Angel, have I done good in life? Have I been a good man? With a smile, Sanosuke approached the elderly man and gave him a shoulder pat. You've done admirably, Jiraiya. You may be a lecher, but you have a good heart. It's in the right place, even if your head usually isn't. Now I suggest all of you get to sleep, we start early tomorrow. While Tenten was getting her and Naruto's tent ready, she glanced up. What about you, Sanosuke? Where are you going to sleep? I don't need to, my dear. I'll just be going to see Cammy. Sama now. I'll be here to wake you all up in the morning. Sweet dreams. The teenagers heard Jiraiya complain about smart.ass, no.it. Angels as he rolled into his sleeping bag before he vanished into the night once more. Naruto put an arm around Tenten's waist as she chuckled and cuddled up to him. Night 10. Chan. Sweet dreams. As she fell asleep, Tenten gripped her sword tightly. I'm wondering if my dreams will be sweet. Tenten felt as though she had just closed her eyes and opened them to find herself in a desolate area covered in thick fog. The only landmark she could find after walking for what seemed like an eternity was a tall mountain. From the top, she would undoubtedly be able to see where she was going. Tenten was the only one with no destination. She simply felt obliged to search the mountaintop for one. After sprinting towards the mountain's base, she started climbing, progressively higher as it approaches the summit. Even though it took a day and an eternity, it felt like she reached the summit of the mountain in no time at all. When she stood atop the peak and peered over the top of the fog, she discovered that it wasn't fog at all. It appeared to be a dense cloud bank that she could walk on. Tenten, being as smart as she was, leapt for one of the clouds and discovered it was fairly solid. She rubbed her cheek against it, comparing it to the sensation of Naruto's wings. It was heavenly. Enjoying my clouds, are you? Tenten turned in response to the voice and saw a fair-skinned beauty. She dropped to her knees when she realized that she was the woman Naruto had described. Cammy. Sama. With a laugh that sounded like 1,000 joyfully tinkling bells, the pale woman calmed Tenten's heart. It was difficult not to feel at ease in the presence of the god. At least you're better off than Naruto was when he came here. He was fully prepared to die that day. He thought I was going to punish him for the fox's deeds. The poor silly child. Tenten's mouth opened wide as her head jerked up. He thought that. But, why? Because of the way he was treated. Your soulmate is quite an awe-inspiring man, Chan. That's the reason I chose him to be my warrior. Why did you choose me as his soulmate? I didn't. Destiny brought you two together. You were meant to be. You're two angels on earth. That's what you are. Uncertain of her precise purpose, Tenten stood and turned to face the goddess. Cammy sighed, sensing her bewilderment. Simply put, children lacked patience. You're here because of your sword. She wants to awaken. Yes, your sword has been abused in the past, Tenten. You are the first virtuous person to hold her since the first warrior that created her. What is her name? Cammy clicked her tongue and shook her finger at the girl with the bun. Now that would be telling. Where's the fun in that? You need to find out the hard way. Kids today, I swear. Tenten gave her the peace sign as she departed, watching as the impish goddess started to disappear. What an odd deity. You shouldn't think such things about Cammy. Sama, she just likes to tease. When Tenten heard the sweet voice behind her, she froze. This might have been her sword. Slowly, she turned and saw nothing. Too slow. You need to forget fear if you ever want to see me. Were you afraid that I might be ugly? Tenten turned quickly in the direction of the voice, but nothing was there. Tisk, tisk. Now you turn in anger that I evade you. You'll have to do better. Tenten puffed her cheeks in frustration and turned to try to surprise the voice by turning to the left of where it had come from. Such insolence. You think I would dodge where you think I would? Foolish, and you remain silent. You don't respond to my taunts. You're no fun. Tenten screeched in rage and gritted her teeth. Stop moving, damn it. So you do know how to respond. Interesting. You know, you kind of have a manly voice. Your boyfriend must be attracted to guys subconsciously. Tenten turned quickly in response to the voice, just managing to see what she assumed to be a sleeve before it disappeared. However, she noticed something. You're not too quick on the get. Go are you? And to think, your boyfriend has such a big hammer and sharp wit. Maybe I should meet him. You stay away from him. He's mine. Arguing with an object you know can't have intimate relations with a mortal? You sure are, loopy lady? Stand still so I can hit you. Now why would I do that? I thought you wanted to know my name? Only so I can know the name of the one I'm about to kill. Tenten paused and tried to relax by closing her eyes. She couldn't allow herself to be lured in like that again. She needed to remain composed. Your boyfriend is a real looker, isn't he? You think he still fantasizes about the pink-haired harpy? Tenten swiped out at the voice, growling. That time, she struck flesh and felt the voice's body retreat. Ooh, you got me that time. But you still haven't caught me so I can reveal my name. I'll get you on the next go-around. I swear. Tenten ignored everything else the voice said, listening for anything, footsteps, breathing, anything. However, she heard nothing, felt nothing, and saw nothing because her eyes were closed. However, a slight nudge in the back of her mind urged her to use her right hand to grasp, immediately. Tenten's hand swung out, and she seized the cloth and held on tightly. Oops, looks like you caught me. When the girl with the bun hair opened her eyes, she saw that the new scourge of her life was very short and completely covered in a white cloak. And you are? I'm your sword dummy. I know that, you little short freak. What's your name? The cloaked creature shook off her grasp, turned its back, crossed its arms like a child, and sighed. I'm not telling you anything. You're being a meanie. I don't want to be your sword anymore. Tenten growled and seized the sword's hood, drawing it back. Now listen here, you cheap hunk of, little, girl. The creature pivoted and fixed Tenten with its amiable, naive face. It was difficult to accept that a creature with such a harmless appearance could cause death, as it had in the past. Hi Tenten. It's me. The girl with the brown hair gazed down in awe. Her sword looked like a young girl in a pure white dress, with cherubic cheeks and red hair. She had two small wings on her back and was barefoot. Tenten had to restrain herself from attacking the adorable little bundle. After all, it was an extremely old and potent weapon of destruction. Maybe that was the irony of her look. Pure innocence in the shape of a slab of metal that could kill. What's your name? With a smile, the young girl extended her hand. Keppaku. Nice to meet you, Chan. Tenten took hold of the small creature's hand and observed that it was both soft and hard, like Naruto's wings. You'll find that you have more in common with Naruto than you think. What do you mean? You'll see when you wake up. So, your name is Innocence, as in, not guilty. The young girl enthusiastically nodded her head. Yep. I'm not guilty at all of anything. Aren't you a very powerful sword that has killed many people and eats chakra? Well, I do eat chakra. It tastes different depending on the person it comes from. Like your boyfriend's chakra, it tastes like sweet corn. Tenten laughed and leaned down to point her sword directly at him. You're pretty funny. I always thought Naruto's chakra would taste like ramen since he eats so much of it. Nope, sweet corn. Yours tastes like cotton candy. With a nod, Tenten took a seat on the fluffy clouds and piled the sword into her lap. So, how is this going to work? Are you going to demand anything of me? Only that you don't abuse me, and you let me eat some of your boyfriend's chakra again. I love sweet corn. Keppaku joined in on Tenten's laughter. After talking about insignificant things for a while, the sword suddenly jumped out of her arms and placed her small hands on her hips. The sword drew a tiny feather from its wings and slipped it into Tenten's hand as Tenten watched. She clutched it and searched for an explanation. Time to wake up so you and I can meet in the real world. Are you as big there as you were here? Nah, I'm a lot bigger. My size doesn't change, just the way I look and amuse. Trust me, you'll be surprised by how I look for you. How did you look for your first master? Keppaku med, and put a childlike finger to her chin. I was plain, but beautiful. I had many rune carvings and jewels set into my hilt, but other than that, I was still a large sword and was used to fight off heretics in the name of his god. What was the name of his god? I don't remember, that was a long time ago. I see, how did you become sentient? I don't remember that either. I've been aware as long as I can remember. I've just always been. What's the feather for? That's a secret. After nodding, Tenten noticed that her arms and hands were starting to wane. Will I see you again? Whenever you want. Hey, bring your boyfriend next time, I want to meet him. How? Just touch his hammer and me together, duh. Oh, and be asleep. That helps. Gee, thanks, never would have thought of that. Tenten vanished entirely after the impish sword waved and grinned. I know, I'm so smart, see you on the flip side. Outside the tent, Naruto was getting Jiraiya and Tenten breakfast. He had made the decision to get up before daybreak because he was unsure of Sanosuke's arrival time. He didn't want to be ambushed by that ruthless angel. Never. You never know what he'll do. As he turned to face his tent, a dazzling burst of white light blinded him, and a massive wave of power sent him staggering backward. Without delay, he removed his hammer from his arm and started to approach the tent at a leisurely pace. He heard Jiraiya frantically trying to get out of his bedroll and stand up. Slowly, Naruto extended his hand and grasped the tent flap. Chan? Tenten's forehead struck him, causing him to fall backward while gripping his nose. Damn it, Tenten. That hurt. What's the rush? My sword transformed and met it when I was sleeping and met Cammy on is beautiful but my sword is different now and... Tenten. Take a breath and slow down. He waited for her to catch her breath while holding her shoulders. Tenten took a deep breath and lurched forward, grabbing hold of his lips and knocking him and her over. This is what Jiraiya saw when she stepped outside. With a lecherous smile, he pulled out his ubiquitous notepad. Alright Naruto. Now do something with Zaz. You'll put that pencil down if you know what's good for you. After scowling and tossing the pad onto his bed, Jiraiya sat next to the fire and prevented breakfast from burning. Fine. If you two lovebirds don't want to be inspiration, you shouldn't make out right in front of me. Now, what's all the ruckus? Tenten jumped up, glanced around wildly, and hurried back into the tent. My sword transformed last night. Really? What's her name? Jiraiya and Naruto turned to see Sanosuke standing there holding a piece of bacon. This is good. Now then, let's see it. Half in, half out of her tent, the girl grinned. All right boys. I present to you, the new and improved sword formerly known as Samahata, Keppaku. Naruto's mouth dropped open in shock as she swung the sword out. Sanosuke smiled as Jiraiya raised an eyebrow. The girl was unique. Naruto was powerless to stop himself. Innocence? Your sword's name is Innocence? Tenten frowned and used her palm to strike him in the head. Yes, her name is Keppaku. And I happen to think that she's beautiful. Oh, she says you taste like sweet corn. Sanosuke beat Jiraiya's back in an attempt to clear his airways after he coughed and spat out the water he had been drinking. At last he caught his breath and burst out laughing. Sweet corn. Oh Cammy, that's hilarious. Tenten gave the perverted ninja a charming smile. She says you taste like dog shit. How she knows what that tastes like I have no clue. With a furious pout, the white-haired man returned his attention to breakfast. Sword looks stupid anyway. Naruto turned back to his soulmate after glaring at his mentor's back. Let's have a better look at it Chan. He swung the sword in various directions after she handed it to him. He had to concede that it was really awesome. Despite its smooth appearance, the sword's hilt was actually ridged to give her a firm grip. The sword's body caught me off guard. With its ripping power and thousands of tiny spikes, Samahata had appeared menacing and dangerous, but Keppaku appeared gentle and unquestionably harmless. However, that was not the case at all. Her whole sword was shaped like a feather, with a curved end that seemed to be blowing in the wind, and it had a downy, light appearance. Upon closer inspection, the sword most definitely did not sway like a feather in the breeze, and each individual sliver was razor sharp. Except for Tenten, It was definitely not as light as a feather either. Keppaku was a sword to be reckoned with because it was pure white and had the added benefit of appearing as though you couldn't defeat a defenseless man who was already on the verge of death. Naruto congratulated his soulmate on her sword and expressed his pride in her. He laughed at how their adversaries would likely dismiss her as a crazy girl brandishing a huge feather, just before she cut them in two. Tenten eagerly scanned her surroundings for anything to cut and try out her new toy. She drew the sword back like a baseball bat and ran to a tree. The way the tree leaned at the top caused Naruto's eyes to widen. Chan, wait, but it was too late. Keppaku went through the trunk like a hot knife through butter after she swung as hard as she could. Tenten squealed like a child as she swung the enormous sword to her shoulder, until she noticed how the tree was falling over. It was too late when she attempted to take action. All she could do was watch as the tree made its way directly to Naruto's tent and her. Fortunately, Naruto had already taken out his hammer. He sat down in relief after cocking back and swinging it at the tree, knocking it to the side, only to hear a shout of rage. "You little shits. You crushed my tent, my precious research. Come on Arrow. Sennin, I'll buy you a new tent. I've had that tent for years, you little bastard." Before they could swing, Sanosuke sighed and moved between them. "You two calm down. Jiraiya, Naruto will purchase you a new travel set of your choice." At last, Jiraiya joined in the conversation and gave an evil smile. "My choice, huh? I accept." "Good. Naruto, that was quick thinking, but next time, be more observant of your surroundings." What if that had been an ally or Jiraiya had been asleep? The boy looked at the ground and gave his head a sheepish rub. Sanosuke pivoted and aimed for Tenten. "And you, young lady. You need to pay more attention to what you're doing. You could have killed one of us. You should be ashamed." She shuffled her feet back and forth while glancing at the ground. "I'm sorry, you three hold your heads up. I'm not going to beat you, I'm just scolding you. Now let's eat and then we'll start the good stuff." After distributing the bread and bacon, Naruto started to stuff his mouth. "What good stuff?" Sanosuke put his hands together and smiled menacingly. "Why your torture, of course. What else?" Tenten thought he was joking, so he looked up with hope. "You mean training, right?" "Oh no, I mean torture." The two soul-mates gulped as they exchanged glances. "Oh, and it's a spar between you two, no holds barred. See? I'm a genius." They decided that was up for debate. Breakfast was good, at least. "Why is Kisame not with you?" Itachi lowered his head and was careful with his words. "We approached the Kyuubi vessel to try once more to ascertain his power at my behest. I was disappointed with his prior performance. We did not know that Jiraiya was traveling with them, as our information said he was not in Konoha. He fought Kisame while I was tied up with Naruto and the brown-haired girl, Tenten. Kisame was too arrogant as normal, and it cost him his life. And Zetsu? Why has he not returned?" Itachi looked into the ringed eyes and turned to where he heard Pain's voice. "Zetsu was caught by Naruto and killed by that massive hammer. Impossible. Zetsu was not a fighter, but he was too careful to be caught by that brat. Zetsu had become complacent over time and thought himself well hidden. The Kyuubi vessel found him, bound him, and crushed his head. I managed to go back and get his ring before I made my retreat." Abruptly, Itachi found himself with a hand around his throat, leaning against the opposite wall of the room. Pain gazed without emotion, but his anger was evident in his eyes. "Again, I say, impossible. Zetus was the best shinobi at infiltration. That little brat couldn't have killed him. Tell us the truth." "Pain, let him go. If Itachi says that is how it happened, then that is how it happened. He would not betray me." "This is foolish. Pain, do not disobey me. I can always find another to follow my orders. You are expendable." After a few moments of staring at his master, Pain dropped Itachi to the ground and left, his robes billowing. Itachi looked up into Madara's lone eye and rubbed his sore throat. "Thank you, Madara. Sama. Pain. Sama needs to learn to hold his tongue." Itachi received a backhand that launched him into the air. He flipped in midair and remained motionless. He needed to maintain appearances. "That was for allowing Kisame and Zetsu to be killed. They were valuable, Itachi. It will be difficult to find others of their caliber. Do not fail me again." Itachi bowed low to Madara and nodded. "Fear not, Madara. Sama, next time, I shall not fail you." "See that you do not." Itachi felt the phantom pain as he rubbed his cheek and watched as the man vanished into the darkness. "You whimpering old fool, get over it. I will soon be free of you and your constrictive rules, and I will be aware of my limitations in the conflict that will end all conflicts. And I'll do it with the aid of your worst enemy." For the remainder of the night, that insane smile remained on his face.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.